The subject on the table burned out at the 9th minute, and Oru had watched enough of them go to know it by the smell before the instrument said so. The threed's respiration spiked, then flattened. A thin seam of light traced up its inner arm, following the vessels the way a crack follows the grain of stone, and then the light was gone and so was the threed. The reactor 2 decks below coughed once through the hull and settled back into its dying rhythm. Nothing had been stored. Nothing had held. The station drank what little charge the body had surrendered in its last seconds and asked for more, the way it always asked for more. Oru shut off the current with 3 of his 6 fingers, and did not let the other 3 shake where the overseer could see them. "That is 11, the overseer said from the doorway. Draxal did not come into the surgery. The Kalrek never came into the surgery. They thought the Mender cast carried something in the air, and Oru had never corrected the belief because it bought him the only privacy left on the station. 11 of my stock, Mender. 11 bodies you have poured into that reactor, and it is no fuller than the day the drive died." "They were never going to hold it," Oru said. He kept his voice in the flat register the Kalrek read as submission. "I told the captain this at the 4th. The threed metabolism collapses under load. So does the Vanu. So does mine. You are asking flesh to do the work of a containment cell. I am asking you to keep my station breathing." Draxal's tail moved against the deck plating, a slow scrape that meant the overseer was deciding whether Oru was worth the ration he cost. "The gantry has 40 days of stored charge and it is bleeding 2 a day. You are the mender. Mend." Oru looked at the dead threed and thought about how many ways there were to say this cannot be done, and how none of them would keep him alive past the last of the charge. When the lights went out on Saro's gantry, the mender who had failed to save it would be the first thing the crew ate. He had run that arithmetic on the first day. It had not changed. "I need different stock," he said. Draxal's crest flattened. "There is no different stock. There is what came in on the last 3 haulers, and you have burned most of it. The hauler from the rim lane, 2 rotations back. You logged the cargo as labor and put it in the low hold." Oru turned from the table so the overseer would not read the calculation on him. Menders were supposed to be poor at calculation. It was part of what made them safe to keep. "There was a species in that manifest I have not tried, a world code I did not recognize. Verge class." "Verge," Draxal made the sound the Kalrek made when a word cost them nothing. "Soft things. 2 limbs, no shell, no venom. The overseer of the low hold says they do not even fight when you take one out. They watch." "Bring me one," Oru said. "The youngest whole one you have. If it dies like the others, you have lost a thing that does not fight. If it does not die," he let the sentence go unfinished, because a mender who promised was a mender who could be blamed, and because he did not in truth expect anything. He had opened the manifest that morning and read the world code twice and something in the old training under the indenture, the training the Kalrek had never bothered to strip out of him, had said, "Look here." That was all. A word on a manifest. Verge class. Catalogued out of a system the Mender schools called a cauldron world, and beside the code, a single dry line entered by whatever survey team had been unlucky enough to make it. Fauna disproportionately durable. Do not land. Draxal was already turning to go. "You have until the charge falls below 30. Then I feed you to the crew, and I fly this hulk to the nearest port on emergency cells, and I sell the story of the mender who could not mend." The door sealed. Oru stood alone with the dead threed and the sound of the reactor failing under his feet, and he began, without hope and out of long habit, to clean his instruments for the next one. They brought her up 4 hours later, and the first thing Oru noticed was that Draxal had been right. She did not fight. 2 guards walked her in, both Kalrek, both with the salvage crew's mismatched armor and the shot goads they used on the hold stock. She was small, the top of her head reached the middle of a Kalrek's chest, and she was filthy in the specific way of someone who had been in a low hold for 2 rotations. Dust worked into the creases of her hands, a dried scrape along one cheekbone that no one had cleaned. dark hair cut short and grown out ragged. She wore the gray underlayer of a ship's rigging crew, the kind of hard-wearing cloth that outlasted the crew that wore it. Her eyes went around the surgery once, the table, the restraints, the dark seam on the deck where the thread had voided, the racked instruments, and Oru saw her read all of it and price all of it and arrive at the correct total, which was that she had been brought here to die. She did not scream, she did not beg. She looked at the table, and then she looked at Oru, and she said, in the trade tongue the haulers used, spoken slowly and wrong and perfectly understandable, "You are the one who has been killing them." Oru had prepared many kinds of answer over 11 subjects. He had not prepared for the question to be put to him plainly, in his own language, by the thing on the table. "Yes," he said. Something moved behind her eyes, not fear. He had catalogued fear in a dozen species, and this was not it. It was closer to the look a mender's own instructor wore over a difficult chart, assessment, filed away, the emotion held somewhere behind the work. She let the guards push her toward the table, and she got up onto it herself before they could lift her, which surprised them, and she lay back against the cold plate and looked at the ceiling. "How long do they last?" she said. "The ones before me." "Bring the restraints," one guard said in Kalrek. "She is not fighting," Oru said. "Leave them. They frighten the subject and a frightened metabolism fails faster. Wait outside. I will call when it is finished." The guards looked at each other. Then they left, because the mender carried something in the air, and because the small, soft thing on the table had not so much as flinched, and there was nothing here worth staying in the room to watch. When the door sealed, Oru answered her. 9 minutes, he said. The best of them lasted 9 minutes. He searched the trade tongue, your kind I have never tried. I do not know how long you will last. Tell me what it does. She was still looking at the ceiling. Her voice did not change. Not what happens after, what it does. No subject had ever asked him that. The thread had wept. The Vanu had prayed to something with too many names. This one wanted the mechanism. Oru found, to his own surprise, that he wanted to give it to her, that after 11 silences it was almost a relief to say the thing aloud to someone who had asked. The station's drive is dead, he said. What keeps us breathing is stored charge, light held in cells, released slowly. The cells are failing and cannot be replaced out here. The captain believes a living body can be made to hold the charge in the cell's place, to store it, to release it on command. A body does not corrode the way a cell corrodes. He drew a breath through the twin slits at his throat. It is not wrong. It is only that no body I have tried can hold it. The charge finds the paths the blood uses and it burns them. The tissue cannot carry that much fire and stay tissue. So they die at the 9th minute, or the 4th, or the 2nd, and the station drinks what leaks out of them, and it is never enough. She was quiet for a moment. Below them the reactor turned over, mist caught. And you keep doing it, she said, even though they die. If I stop, the station dies. When the station dies, everyone on it dies, including the 400 of your kind and every other kind in the low holds. He set out the leads. His fingers were steady now. The work steadied them, it always had. I did not build this trap. I am in it with you. I am only the hand at the end of the wire. That's a coward's math, she said without heat, the way she might have noted that a line was fraying. But it's not wrong. Oru stopped with the lead half connected and looked at her fully for the first time. The small, ruined, durable body. The calm that was not the calm of the resigned, but the calm of someone who had already run the numbers and was waiting to see if the universe had run them the same way. He had lived a long time among species that mistook softness for weakness and loudness for strength, and he had never once seen the two decoupled so cleanly as they were in the thing on his table. "What are you called?" he said. It was not a mender's question. It broke every rule of the indenture. She turned her head and looked at him. "Ren," she said. "Ren Calder, I rig cargo, I fix things that break." A pause. "What are you called?" "Oru," he said, and did not give her the rest of it, because the rest of it belonged to a life before the indenture, and he had not spoken it in a long time. "All right, Oru." Ren Calder settled her shoulders against the plate the way a rigger settles into a harness she does not trust but has decided to use anyway. "You said the fire finds the paths the blood uses and burns them, so the problem is the paths, not the fire. The fire's fine, your other patients couldn't carry it, maybe I can." She said it the way a person says a thing they already suspect is true. "Where I'm from, everything is trying to kill you. Cold, heat, pressure, the things with teeth, the things without teeth that are worse. You don't get to be soft." My grandmother took a charge off a slipped mooring line that would have stopped a Kalrek's heart, and she swore at the line and kept working. "We hold things, it's what we do." She looked back at the ceiling. "Turn it on, low, and watch the paths. If I start to burn, you'll see it coming before I do." For a long moment Oru did not move. Every subject before her had been a body he was emptying into a machine. She had just made herself his collaborator, and she had done it so quietly that he had almost missed the moment the room changed. "You understand," he said, "that if you hold it, they will never let you stop holding it." "I understand that if I don't hold it, you kill me in 9 minutes. Ren Calder closed her eyes. "One problem at a time, that's how you fix a ship that's coming apart. You stop the leak that's killing you now. You worry about the next one when you're still breathing to worry." She exhaled, slow, deliberate, a rigor bleeding tension out of a line. "Low, watch the paths, go." Oru went low. He fed the first thread of charge into her the way he had fed it into all the others, expecting the same climb, the spike in respiration, the seam of light chasing up the vessels, the smell. He watched the paths on the instrument that mapped them, the fine branching tree of her, and he waited for the tree to start to burn. It lit. He saw the charge move into her, saw it find the paths the blood used exactly as it always did, and then he saw the paths take it. Not resist it, take it, carry it. The tree filled with light and stayed a tree. Her respiration climbed and steadied. The seam that should have chased up her arm and killed her spread instead into a low, even glow beneath the skin of her forearm, held there, banked like a fire in a hearth that had been built to hold fire. At the 9th minute, Ren Calder was still breathing. At the 15th she opened her eyes and said, through her teeth, in a voice that had gone tight but had not broken, "Tell me that's more than the others." "That is more than the others," Oru said. His own voice was not steady now. The work had stopped steadying it. "That is more than all of the others put together." "Good." Her hands had closed slowly into fists at her sides, the only sign the load was costing her anything. "Then stop looking at me like a chart, Oru, and read me the gauge. How much am I holding?" He read her the gauge. The number on it was one the station had not seen since the drive died. 2 decks down the reactor's stutter smoothed, for the first time in 40 days, into something that was almost a pulse. Ren Calder heard it change through the hull, the way a rigger hears a line go taut, and she smiled without any warmth at all, a small flat expression that Oru would learn to be afraid of on her behalf, because it was the expression she wore when she had decided how something was going to end, and was simply waiting for the rest of the room to catch up. "There it is," she said softly. "Now turn it down before I cook and go tell your captain his lights are back. Don't tell him yet what they're plugged into." She closed her eyes again. "Let me pick the moment he finds out what he's actually holding on to. I want to be ready when he does." Oru turned the charge down. On the table, the small, durable thing from the cauldron world held what 11 bodies had died failing to hold, and did not let go, and did not stop watching the door. Draxal came to the surgery doorway that same shift, because the reactor master had felt the change through the deck and reported it, and because a Kalrek overseer trusted a rising gauge exactly as far as he could see what was raising it. He stopped at the threshold, as he always did, and looked at the table, and at the small thing on it that was still alive at the 4th hour, and something in the set of his crest changed. "It holds," Draxal said. "It holds," Oru agreed. He had spent the intervening hours deciding how much to say and had settled on the truth, sanded down. A mender who lied to the crew about a working solution was a mender who would be caught lying, and there was no lie here that served him better than the fact. The Verge-class metabolism carries the charge instead of burning under it. I do not fully understand why. I suspect the world it came from selects for tissue that survives loads that kill everything softer. Whatever the reason it holds, the gauge you are looking at is real. Draxal's eyes moved from the gauge to Ren and back to the gauge, and Oru watched the overseer do the arithmetic that overseers did, the arithmetic that never included the word asterisk person. One of them, Draxal said slowly, is doing the work of the whole cell bank. For now, at a low load. I do not know how high it can be pushed, or how long it can hold before it fails like the others, only later. Oru said the last part deliberately. He needed Draxal to believe there was a ceiling and a clock, because an overseer who believed his miracle was fragile would spend it carefully, and every careful hour was an hour Ren Calder stayed breathing. Handle it wrong and you have another dead thing on the table, and a station with no lights and 40 days gone. How high can it be pushed? I do not know yet. That is what the next days are for. I raise the load slowly and I watch the paths. Push too fast and you learn the ceiling by breaking it. He met the overseer's eyes, which was itself a small risk, and offered him the thing that would make him patient. You wanted your station to breathe. It is breathing. Let me learn how deep it can breathe without killing the lung. That is a mender's work and it takes a mender's time. For a moment he thought Draxal would push anyway, because Kalrek pushed. It was the shape of them. But the overseer looked once more at the gauge, steady, higher than it had been in 40 days, and greed, for once, argued for patience. Learn fast, Draxal said. The charge is still falling. It is only falling slower. He turned to go, then stopped and looked at Ren directly for the first time. The way a man looks at a tool he has just discovered is more valuable than the box he found it in. Does it understand speech? It understands the trade tongue, Oru said, before Ren could answer, because he did not yet know what she would say and did not want to find out in front of the overseer. Then it understands this. Draxal spoke to her slowly, the way the crew spoke to hold stock, loud and simple, as if volume crossed the gap that biology could not. You hold the light, you are fed. You stop holding the light, you are meat. Simple arithmetic, soft thing, even you can count that high. Ren Calder opened her eyes and looked at the overseer for a long, unhurried moment. When she spoke, it was in the trade tongue, slow and wrong and perfectly clear, and there was nothing in it he could punish and nothing in it that yielded. I can count higher than that, she said. You'd be surprised how high I can count. Draxal decided it was agreement, because that was the answer that cost him nothing, and he left. When the door sealed, Oru stood very still. He does not know what you meant, Oru said. No, Ren let her head fall back against the plate. The glow under her forearm had banked to almost nothing at the low load, a coal under ash. You did, though. That's a start. She flexed her fingers, testing something. How long can you keep me on this table before he wants me somewhere he can watch me all the time? Days, perhaps. I will tell him the tissue needs to stabilize, that moving the subject risks the load. Oru began, without being asked, to clean the scrape on her cheekbone that no one had cleaned, and she let him, watching his 6 fingers work with the flat, assessing attention she gave to everything. Why does it matter where they keep you? Because I need to know the ship, Ren said. You're the hand at the end of the wire, fine. I'm the thing at the end of the wire now, which means the wire runs to me, which means I'm about to learn a lot about where all the wires go. She winced as the antiseptic bit and did not otherwise move. You said the charge finds the paths the blood uses, so I'm carrying it, storing it, letting it out slow on command. Her eyes came up to his. Whose command, Oru? Yours. His, or do I get a say in when I let go and how much? Oru's fingers stopped. It was, he realized, the question. It had been the question since the 9th minute, and he had been not tasking it because the answer changed everything about what he was doing in this room. Every subject before her had been a container. A container did not choose when to empty. But she was not a container. She was carrying the charge the way a rigger carried a load, actively, with judgment, deciding moment to moment how the weight was borne. The choosing was not incidental to how she held it. It might be the whole reason she could. "The current comes through the leads," he said carefully. "I control the leads, but the release—" He stopped. He made himself say the true thing. "The release, I think, is yours. I can ask your tissue to let go of the charge. I cannot make it. The others, when they died, the charge tore out of them because they had no control of it at all. You are holding it because some part of you has decided to hold it, which means some part of you decides when it stops holding." "Good," Ren said. "That's what I thought. I could feel it." She closed her eyes again, and the coal under her skin brightened just slightly and then banked as if she were turning a valve she alone could reach. It's like a mooring line. Once it's on your winch, you decide when it pays out. Nobody up on the gantry decides that. They can yell all they want. She opened her eyes. He thinks he's got a battery. He's got a rigger holding a line, and he's standing under the load, and he doesn't know it yet. That flat, small smile again. "Don't tell him." "No," Oru said, "I will not tell him." And in the space between her question and his answer, without either of them naming it, the surgery on Saro's gantry stopped being a place where a mender killed the captain's stock and became something else. A place where two prisoners, each at one end of the same wire, began quietly to plan. Over the next 4 days, Oru raised the load, and Ren Calder learned the station. She learned it the way she said she would, through the wire. Every cell bank on the gantry was tied into the same failing web, and now the web ran through her, and she could feel where the charge went the way a rigger feels which lines are taking strain. She could not see the station, strapped to a table in the surgery, but she could feel it, the life support pulling steady off her through the day cycle, the drag when the crew ran the cargo cranes, the specific greedy spike whenever the reactor master tried to top the emergency cells off her store instead of off the reactor. "He's stealing," she told Oru on the 3rd day, eyes closed, tracking something he couldn't see. "Your reactor master. He's pulling charge off me into the emergency cells and logging it as reactor output so Draxol thinks the reactor's recovering. He's building a private store." She said it the way she'd report a fouled line. "Skimming. There's always one who skims. Good to know who." Oru filed it. He was filing a great many things now. He had spent the indenture keeping his head down and his calculations hidden, and here was a small, durable creature strapped to his table doing openly the thing he had trained himself never to be caught doing, reading the whole machine, pricing every part of it, mapping the failure points. It should have frightened him. Instead, he found, in the 2nd decade of a life spent afraid, that it steadied him more than the work did. He raised the load, she took it, he raised it again. She took that too, though he saw the cost now, the way her breathing changed under a high load, the sweat, the fine tremor she controlled and would not let show above the wrists. He kept the map of her paths in front of him the whole time, and he learned to read her tree the way she read the station, and when he saw the branches start to run hot, he brought the load down before she had to ask, and she noticed him do it, and something passed between them that neither named. "You're watching the paths," she said once in the middle of a hard hour, the words coming tight. "Bringing me down before I burn. You don't have to. I'd have told you." "You would have told me too late," Oru said. "You would have carried it 3 minutes past when you should have, because you are the kind that carries it, and then the tissue would have failed and I would have lost you. I watch the paths so that your judgment about how much you can bear is not the only thing between you and the 9th minute." He adjusted the lead. "You keep the station alive. Someone should keep you alive. It appears to be me." Ren was quiet a moment. "That's the first thing you've said that wasn't coward's math," she said. "Careful, Draxol will smell it on you." He knew she was right. A mender who had begun to care whether his subject lived was a mender who had begun to be dangerous to the crew, and the crew could smell danger the way they could smell the mender cast's imagined contagion. He schooled it. He kept his voice flat when Draxall came to the door, kept his reports dry and clinical, spoke of the subject as asterisk it, and the load as an engineering problem, and never once let the overseer see that the surgery had 2 prisoners in it, and not 1 prisoner and 1 tool. On the 4th day, Draxall stopped believing there was a ceiling, and everything got harder. He came to the door and looked at the gauge, which had climbed for 4 days without the subject dying, and the caution that had kept him patient curdled into the greed it had only ever been holding back. "You said there was a ceiling," Draxall said. "You said push too fast and I learn it by breaking it. 4 days, Mender, it has not broken. I am beginning to think you invented the ceiling to slow me down." "The ceiling is real," Oru said. "I have not found it because I have been careful. Careful is why it is still alive to hold your charge. Push it to the ceiling and past, and you will find the ceiling the way the others found theirs, as a corpse in a dark station. Or the ceiling is far higher than a cautious mender wants to risk his miracle to find." Draxall's tail scraped the deck. "Here is the new arithmetic. The gantry is worth nothing as a hulk, but a station with a living power core, a core that holds and does not corrode, that is worth a shipyard. That is worth a fleet contract. I am not going to limp this wreck to the nearest port and sell scrap. I am going to arrive with a working core, and I am going to sell the asterisk method." His eyes moved to Wren, cold and bright with the specific greed of a small operator who has just glimpsed a large future. "I am going to sell how it is made, which means I am going to need to know it can be pushed to full load and survive, which means, Mender, you are going to push it. Tonight." Oru felt the trap close a notch tighter. "Full load will kill it." "Then we learn the ceiling and I sell that too. The range." Draxall's crest flared. "I did not ask. Push it to full by the end of the shift. If it lives, we all get rich. If it dies, you have 400 more Verge class in the low hold, and now you know they work." He turned to go. "Efficiency, Mender, you should be pleased. I have finally found a stock that does not run out." The door sealed. Oru turned to the table and found Wren Calder already looking at him, calm, having heard and understood all of it, running the numbers again behind those flat assessing eyes. "Full load," she said. "It will hurt you past anything I have put you through," Oru said. "It may kill you. I do not know the ceiling. He is right that I hid how high it might be, but I did not lie that there is one, and I do not know where it is, and finding it is way. Finding it is way, we find it by whether I stop breathing." Wren finished it for him, unbothered, as if he had described a difficult repair and not her death. "Okay. So we don't find it his way." She shifted against the restraints. Oru had never buckled them, but she lay as if she wore them, so the crew who glanced through the door saw a subject secured. "Here's what he just told us, Oru, and it's more than he thinks. He's not going to bleed me dry and move on. He wants me alive and working, because a live core is worth a shipyard and a dead one's worth scrap. That means for the first time since you pulled me out of that hold, the man with the goad needs me to keep breathing." She let that sit. "You know how long it's been since anybody on this ship needed me alive. That's leverage. That's a line I can put strain on." "Leverage he does not know you hold," Oru said slowly. "Leverage nobody holds until they pull it and find out it's real." She almost smiled. "Push me to full tonight, but you and I decide what full looks like on the gauge. You control the leads, I control the release. Between us we control the only number Draxall can actually see." Her eyes sharpened. "We show him a ceiling, a real-looking one, high enough to keep him greedy, low enough that I'm not actually dying to draw it. He gets his data. We get another day. And every day I'm on this wire, I learn another deck." She settled back. "UN." Oru looked at the small, ruined, durable thing that 4 days ago he had expected to kill in 9 minutes. And that had instead quietly recruited him into a conspiracy against the man who owned them both. And he understood that he had been asterisk in since the moment he answered her first question honestly. "I am in," he said. "Tell me what a convincing ceiling looks like, and I will make the instrument say it." They built Draxal his ceiling that night. Oru ran the load up in stages, calling the numbers to the reactor master through the comm so there would be a record. And at each stage, Ren took more than she should have been able to and made it look like less, banking the charge low, when Draxal watched the gauge, letting the tremor show in her hands at exactly the load they had agreed would read as near the limit. When Oru pushed past the number they'd chosen, she let the seam of light climb up her arm the way the dying one's light had climbed, let her respiration spike, let the whole instrument tree flush hot, and then, on a word from him, banked it all back down, controlled, deliberate, a rigger easing a line off the winch, and the instrument showed a core that had touched its ceiling and pulled back from the edge alive. Draxal, watching the gauge from the safe side of the door, was delighted. "There," he said, "there is the range. Highest sustained hold before failure. That is the number I sell." He looked at Ren with something that was almost fondness, the fondness of a man for a thing that had just made him rich. "Feed it well, Mender. Feed it whatever it eats. A rich man does not starve his own good luck." "It eats what your hold stock eats," Oru said. "More of it. Holding your charge costs it more than labor costs the others. If you want it to keep holding, it eats double and it rests and it is not goaded." He risked the last of it. "A cracked core holds nothing. You have seen how easily they crack." "Double rations for the core." Draxal waved a hand, munificent now, a wealthy man. "See, it does not crack. Everything else on this station I will spend to the bone. Not this." He left, planning his shipyard, and did not once understand that the number he was going to sell was a number 2 prisoners had made up, or that the ceiling he thought he had found was a line the small soft thing had drawn exactly where she wanted him to see it. When the door sealed, Ren let out a long breath and the tremor she'd been performing became, for a moment, real, the aftershock of a load that had genuinely cost her, even held back from true full. "Double rations," she said when she could, "and rest, and no goad." She almost laughed, a dry cracked sound. "First improvement in my working conditions since I got captured, and I got it by being worth more alive." She turned her head. "Now feed me, Oru, I meant it. Holding this is hungry work and I've got a station to map." On the 5th day, before they moved her, Draxal decided he needed to see the core do more than hold. He came to the surgery door in the middle of the shift with the reactor master behind him, and Oru knew from the set of the overseer's crest that the greed had grown a new head overnight, the way greed did. A thing that only stored charge was a battery. A thing that could release charge on command precisely, where it was told. That was worth more than a battery to a Kalrek who had watched a broker's imagination light up at the word asterisk method. "You tell me it stores," Draxal said. "You tell me it holds and does not corrode. Good. But Sesh tells me a store is only worth what you can pull out of it and pull it clean and pull it where you want it." His eyes went to Ren on the table. "So, it stores. Can it give, on command? Can I point it at a thing and have it put the charge there and not somewhere else and not everywhere at once?" He did not wait for Oru to answer. "Show me. Pull a charge out of it and put it into that." He gestured at a dead maintenance panel on the surgery wall, a scavenged unit that had not lit in the length of Oru's indenture, its indicator stripped black. "Light that. Only that. If it can give where I point, I have something to sell. If it only holds, I have a rock that glows." Oru felt the request for the trap it was. It was not really about the panel. Draxal was learning, the slow, greedy way, that a core he could aim was a core he could use. And a core he could aim at a dead panel was a core he could aim at other things. And both prisoners heard the other things in the silence under the order. "Discharge is harder on the tissue than storage," Oru said, buying a moment, pricing what Ren would want. "Pulling charge out under control, placing it precisely, that is a finer load than holding. It risks the—" "Everything risks the core, to hear you tell it." Draxal's tail scraped. "Light the panel, Mender, or I begin to think your miracle only does the one easy thing, and you are stretching it into a fortune it cannot earn." On the table, Ren opened her eyes. She had heard all of it and understood all of it, and Oru watched her make the same calculation he had just made and arrive somewhere colder and cleverer. "I can light the panel," she said in the slow, wrong, perfect trade tongue to Draxall directly, which she rarely did. "Tell the mender to open the lead to that wall. I'll put the charge where you point, only there, clean." She said it flat, obedient sounding, a tool confirming its function. "But you should watch this carefully because what you're about to see is the whole thing you want to sell. If I can put it in that panel and nowhere else, I can put it anywhere and nowhere else. That's the method. That's the shipyard." She closed her eyes, "So watch where it goes. Watch how clean." Draxall watched, greedy and pleased that the tool understood its own value. Oru opened the lead to the dead wall panel with fingers he kept steady by force, because he understood now what Ren was doing. She was not refusing the demonstration. She was performing it, teaching the overseer to believe in a control so precise he would never think to fear it, because a thing that put the charge exactly where told was a thing that obeyed, and obedience was the last thing Draxall would ever be afraid of. She lit the panel. Oru saw it on the tree, a thread of charge drawn up out of her store, thin and controlled, running down the single opened lead to the dead wall unit, and the panel's black indicator strip came alive for the first time in a decade, a clean, even line of light, only that panel, nothing else in the surgery so much as flickering. She held it lit for a slow count, steady, precise, a core placing its charge exactly where the overseer had pointed and nowhere else, and then she let it go dark, clean, no leak, no spill, the store banking back down under her skin. Draxall's crest went high. "There," he said to Sesh, to himself, to the fortune he was assembling. "There it is. It gives where I point, clean. That is the method. That is what the broker buys." He looked at Ren with the fondness of a man for a thing that had just doubled in value. "It even understands what it is worth. Good. A tool that knows its price is a tool that does not need the goad." "It knows exactly what it is worth," Oru said, closing the lead, keeping his voice in the flat register, and did not add the rest of the sentence, which was that a tool which had just demonstrated it could place a charge with perfect precision anywhere it chose had also just demonstrated, to the two prisoners in the room and to no one else, the entire mechanism by which a ship might one day be taken one clean placement at a time. But Sesh had not gone high with pleasure. The reactor master had watched the dead panel light, and Oru, who had spent a decade learning to read the crew, saw the thing move behind Sesh's eyes that had not moved behind Draxall's, because Sesh was not the owner dreaming of a fortune. Sesh was the engineer who had been the most important thing on this station for as long as its reactor had been dying, the one who controlled the charge, who skimmed it, who lied about it. And he had just watched a soft thing on a table place a clean line of fire exactly where it wanted with more control than Sesh had ever had over the reactor he tended. He had watched his own importance light up on a wall and hold steady and go dark on someone else's command. "It gives where you point," Sesh said slowly to Draxall, and there was a new thing in his voice thin under the deference. "Where you *point, as long as it wants to be pointed. You are certain the pointing is yours, overseer. A battery does not choose where it empties. That thing chose. You saw it choose. It put the charge exactly where it decided to put it, and it happened to decide where you pointed this time." He looked at Ren on the table with the specific unease of a man who has just seen his replacement demonstrate its superiority. "I would be careful selling a method whose method is that the stock is cleverer than the tool it is pretending to be." For a moment the surgery was very quiet, and Oru's throat slits closed, because Sesh had come nearer the truth in 8 seconds of jealousy than Draxall had come in 5 days of greed. Had seen, dimly, through the resentment, that the thing on the table was not a battery choosing to obey but a rigger choosing where the line paid out, and that the choosing was the danger. But Draxall was an owner, and owners did not fear their property, and jealousy from a reactor master, who had just been made less important, read to him as exactly that, jealousy, the small operator's fear of being replaced. "You are frightened it works better than your reactor," Draxal said, dismissive, and Oru watched Sesh's warning die in the Overseer's contempt. "Good, be frightened. Make the reactor worth keeping and I will keep you. Otherwise I have a core that lights panels and holds a shipyard's charge and does not talk back." He turned to go, the demonstration a success in his ledger. "Move it to the cradle tomorrow, Mender. Bolt my fortune into the heart of my ship where nothing can happen to it, and feed it. A tool that knows its price earns its rations." He left. Sesh lingered one moment longer, looking at the small soft thing on the table that had lit a panel cleaner than he had ever run his reactor, and Oru saw the reactor master file the unease away where it would curdle, over the next days, into a skim and a lie and a hard drain in the dark. The fracture opening exactly where jealousy had opened it, the fault line Ren would one day hollow from the inside. Then Sesh left too. When the door sealed, Ren opened her eyes. "He saw it," she said, "the skimmer. He almost saw the whole thing." "He saw enough to hate you and not enough to stop you," Oru said. "It is the worst place for him to stand and the best place for us. A crew member who half understands and is not believed is a crew member who does something rash and alone." He closed the last lead. "You lit the panel to teach Draxal you obey. You lit it clean to teach me and you that you can place a charge anywhere you choose, exactly, and nowhere else. And you did both with the same thread of light, in front of both of them, and only the jealous one felt the second lesson under the first." He looked at her with something that was no longer only a mender's assessment. "You are teaching a whole room different things with the same act, and each of them learns the lesson that fits what they already fear. That is not a rigger's skill." "I do not know what that is." "It's a rigger's skill," Ren said, closing her eyes, the store banked low and clean under her skin. "You just never watched a good one work a crew that didn't want to hear the load was wrong. You say the true thing in a way each of them can stand to hear, and you let them each take the piece they can carry and you keep the whole shape to yourself." A pause. Draxal heard obedience. Sesh heard a threat. You heard a plan, all the same panel. The flat small smile. "Now open the lead a crack and let me feel where that wall unit ties back into the trunk. If I can reach a dead panel 3 rooms from the reactor, I want to know what else I can reach from the cradle tomorrow." A rigger measures her reach before she plans the lift. They moved her on the 6th day, and Ren Calder used the walk to count. Draxal had decided that a core worth a shipyard should not lie on a surgeon's table where a lucky current spike could end it. It should be cradled at the heart of the station, wired directly into the trunk lines, where the charge she held could be drawn without the long, thin runs that bled it. He called it protecting his investment. Oru called it, privately, exactly what it was: a way to bolt her to the machine so completely that she became a component with no independent existence, a part you could not remove without killing the ship. Ren called it a tour. 2 guards walked her down from the surgery, and she went slow, and she counted. She counted decks by the change in the deckplate underfoot salvage station, patched 100 times, every deck a different scavenged alloy that rang a different note. She counted crew by their smell and their tread. Kalrek were heavy and their armor rattled, and she learned to tell the reactor master's crew from the cargo crew from Draxal's 2 personal guards by the specific rattle. She counted the hold stock too, the low decks where the captives were kept, by the sounds that came up through the grates, and one of those sounds was human, a voice arguing in the trade tongue about water rations, and she filed the deck and the voice and did not turn her head. They put her in the core cradle in a chamber directly over the reactor, and it was, she had to admit, a good cradle. A frame of scavenged bracing, a seat that took her weight, trunk lines running to a collar of leads at her spine and forearms where Oru could connect and disconnect her. Warm from the reactor below. Loud with the reactor's dying stutter, close enough now that she could feel each miss in her teeth. And wired, she understood the moment they seated her, into everything, because she felt the whole station arrive in her at once, no longer a distant tug through thin runs but the full weight of it, life support and lights and cranes and the reactor master's greedy little skimming siphon, all of it hanging off the collar at her spine. "Better," she said aloud and meant it, and the guards heard a docile core approving of its cage. And Oru, connecting the last lead, heard a rigger who had just been handed the master control of the entire winch house and told to sit in it quietly. "Better how?" Oru said low under the reactor noise. "I can feel all of it now," Ren said. "Every line, where it goes, what's pulling." She closed her eyes and the glow banked under her forearms steady, a woman settling into a chair she intended to stay in. Before on the table I could feel the strain through the thin runs like reading a rope through a glove. Now the glove's off. She opened her eyes. "Oru, I can feel the doors." He went still. "The doors." "The pressure doors, the hold locks, the cargo bay. They're all on the same trunk I'm sitting on because this is a salvage wreck and they never split the systems." Her voice did not rise, it never rose. "Everything on this ship that opens and closes on power that runs through me now. I don't control it yet, but it runs through me. That's not nothing." She almost smiled. "That's a lot of not nothing." Oru finished seating the lead with fingers that had gone unsteady again. And this time the work did not steady them, because the work was now the thing that frightened him. He had bolted a durable creature that read whole machines into the exact center of the machine, and Draxal had ordered it, and the overseer had no idea that he had just given his prisoner the one thing a rigger needs, which is a place to stand and a line to pull. The captive from the low hold was named Tio Vance, and Ren learned his name the way she learned everything now, through the wire, sideways, patient. She could not see him, but the hold he was in shared a trunk line with the core chamber, and the hold's failing lights flickered on the same circuit that ran through her, and on the second night in the cradle she found that she could make them flicker. Not much. A dip and a rise, a rigger's worth of control learned by feel over long hours while the crew slept, and only Oru kept watch, dozing in the corner of the chamber, because the mender was not permitted to leave the core unattended. She flickered the hold lights in a pattern. A rigger's pattern, the old dock cadence, 3 short and a long, the one every hand on every hauler in the rim lanes knew, the one that meant "Are you there?" She did it for an hour before an answer came, and when it came the same way, up the trunk from the hold, a load drawn and released in the same cadence by someone down there who had figured out that the lights were talking and had reached back. 3 short, a long, I'm here. There's a human in the low hold, she told Aru in the morning. Rim lane hand. Nose dock cadence, we've been talking through the lights. She watched him process it. There are 400 of us down there, you said, Verge class, my kind, and now I'm sitting on the one trunk line that runs to all their locks. She let that sit in the loud, warm chamber. You did the coward's math on day 1. 400 of mine and every other kind in the holds, and if the station dies, they die. That's why you kept killing people, to keep the lights on for them. Her flat eyes found his. So here's a better math. What if the lights stay on, and the locks open, and the crew that's been feeding people to your reactor stops being the ones who decide who breathes? There are 40 of them, Oru said. It was not a refusal, it was a mender pricing the job. 40 Kalrek armed with the goads and the cutters and the ship guns in the cargo bay. There are 400 of you, unarmed, half-starved, behind locks I cannot open from here without the overseer seeing it on his board. And there is one of me, who has never in my life lifted a hand against anything but tissue on a table. He drew a breath through his throat slits. I am not telling you it cannot be done. I am telling you the arithmetic, because you taught me that we do the arithmetic first and lie to ourselves last. Good, Ren said. That's the right answer. 40 armed, 400 unarmed, one mender who's never thrown a punch, and me, bolted to a chair. She closed her eyes and the glow moved under her skin, slow, banking, building, a fire being fed and held. And every wire on the ship running through the chair. A pause. 40's a lot when you have to fight them. It's not so many when you don't have to fight them at all, when the ship just stops belonging to them. You are talking about the whole station, Oru said quietly. Every system, all at once. I'm talking about a winch house where I'm the only one who can reach the winch, Ren said. But not yet. Not for a while. Right now I can flicker some lights and feel where the doors are, and I couldn't slam a single lock if my life depended on it. I need to be able to do more than flicker. I need to be able to hold a lot, all at once, and let it go exactly where and when I choose. And I need to learn this ship until I know it better than the man who thinks he owns it. She opened her eyes. That's weeks, Oru, maybe more. We do it slow and we do it right, and we don't pull the line until it'll take the whole load in one clean pull. You rig a lift wrong, you drop it on your own head. She settled deeper into the cradle. Feed me. Watch the paths, teach me the reactor. And when Draxal comes to admire his investment, we tell him the core is getting stronger, which is true, and we don't tell him what it's getting strong enough to do. So that was the shape the days took, and Oru, who had spent the indenture measuring his life in the intervals between the crew's cruelties, found the intervals filling instead with the strangest work of his long career, which was teaching a power core how to become a person who could take a station. He taught her the reactor, not the theory. There was no time and she did not need it. He taught her the asterisk feel of it, because that was what she used, where the reactor's stutter came from, which of the failing containment cells were nearest to gone, how the emergency store was walled off from the main trunk and where the wall was thin. He taught her the crew's shift patterns, learned over years of keeping his head down and watching every rotation of the 40, when the cargo bay was manned, and when it was a skeleton watch, when Draxal slept and where, which guards were loyal to the overseer and which two were quietly loyal to the reactor master. Because the reactor master was the crack in the crew, and both prisoners saw it. His name was Sesh, and he was skimming, exactly as Ren had said on the third day, pulling charge off the core into the emergency cells and logging it as reactor recovery, building a private store against the day the gantry reached port and the profit got divided. Draxal did not know. Sesh thought his little theft was invisible. It was invisible to everyone on the ship except the core it was being stolen from, who felt every drop of it leave her, and the mender who tended the core and had learned to read her face. He took more last night, Ren said one morning, tracking it. He's getting bolder. He's up to a full cell's worth a night now, and he's covering it by telling Draxal the reactor's recovering, which means Draxal thinks he needs me less than he does. She frowned, the first real frown Oru had seen on her. That's a problem. If Draxal thinks the reactor's recovering, he starts thinking maybe he doesn't need to feed the core double. Maybe he doesn't need the core rested and ungoaded. Sesh's lie is spending my leverage without me getting to touch it. Then Sesh is a problem we solve before the rest, Oru said, and was mildly surprised to hear himself say we and solve about a member of the crew, as if he had always been a person who solved crew, when in truth he had spent decades being solved by them. Not solve, Ren said. Use. She closed her eyes and the glow moved. A skimmer's the best thing that can happen to us if we're careful. He's already stealing power and hiding it. He's already lying to his boss. He's already got two guards loyal to him instead of Draxal. He's built us a fault line right through the middle of the crew and he thinks it's his secret weapon. That flat, small smile. When the time comes, I don't have to break the crew in half. Sesh already did it. I just have to be the one who decides when the halves find out about each other. Oru looked at her, bolted to the reactor, filthy and durable and calm, mapping the treachery of her captors like a rigger mapping load paths, and he understood that he had stopped some days ago, thinking of her as the thing on his table that he had failed to kill. He had started thinking of her the way the survey line on the manifest had warned him to, disproportionately durable, do not land. Someone had written that about her whole world, a warning to keep ships away, and Draxal had read it as soft, does not fight, and had brought 400 of them aboard and bolted the most durable one to the center of his ship. You should rest, Oru said. You held a high load through the night and Sesh bled a cell off you on top of it. Even durable tissue has a floor. If you drop below it, you cannot climb back, and then all the planning is for a corpse. You sound like you care whether I'm a corpse, Ren said, not opening her eyes. I have decided that I do, Oru said. It is inconvenient. I have not cared whether a subject lived in a very long time. It made the indenture survivable. He adjusted a lead, brought her load down a fraction, let her rest without asking. Then a rigger from a cauldron world told me my arithmetic was a coward's and was correct, and I find I would like to see how the arithmetic comes out when someone is not a coward doing it. So, rest. I will watch Sesh's siphon and wake you if it changes. For a long moment Ren was quiet, and the reactor stuttered below them, and the glow banked to a low, even coal. My grandmother used to say you can tell what a ship's made of by who it keeps alive when it's dying, she said, drowsy, the load easing. This ship kept the skimmer and the overseer and the goad, and it kept you Oru way down at the bottom where they thought you didn't count. A pause, going under. Turns out you count. Turns out the thing they kept to do their killing is the thing that's going to keep me breathing long enough to take their ship. Her breathing slowed into sleep. Bad math on their part. Real bad. She slept. Oru watched the paths and watched Sesh's siphon, and for the first time in the second decade of his indenture, watched the door of the core chamber not out of fear of who might come through it, but with the beginnings of a plan for what he would do when they did. The plan nearly died 3 days later, when Draxal decided to demonstrate the core. He came to the chamber with a guest, a Kalrek broker off a fast courier that had matched the gantry's slow drift, a sleek, well-armored operator named Vosk who dealt in salvage and, Draxal clearly hoped, in shipyard contracts. Draxal had summoned the broker to see the miracle, to begin the sale of the method, and he brought Vosk into the core chamber with the pride of a small operator showing a large one that he had, at last, something worth their time. There, Draxal said, a living core, 6 days mender, 7, it holds where every other stock burned, it does not corrode, it eats whole rations and produces a shipyard's worth of stored charge. He gestured at Ren in her cradle, bolted and glowing faintly, and his crest was high with the specific pride of ownership. Run it up, Mender. Show the broker the range. Oru ran it up, and Ren gave the broker the ceiling. She gave it to him better than she had given it to Draxal, because a broker was a harder audience than a greedy overseer, and she had felt that the moment Vosk walked in. Draxal watched a gauge. Vosk watched asterisk her. So she let the performance cost her more visibly. Let the tremor climb past the wrists this time. Let the seam of light run up her arm and flush her whole tree hot on the instrument board. Let her breath go ragged in a way that was 3/4 real, because Sesh had bled a cell off her the night before, and she was genuinely nearer her floor than she let anyone but Oru know. When Oru brought her down on the agreed word, she sagged in the cradle exactly as a core at its true limit would sag, and the broker's eyes moved over every part of it and found it convincing, because it was mostly true. Impressive, Vosk said. The broker's voice was smooth, unhurried, nothing like Draxal's blunt appetite. And that is the sustained ceiling, the highest it holds before failure. That is the number, Draxal said, proud. Vosk walked a slow circle around the cradle, and Ren, sagging and spent-looking, tracked the broker through half-closed eyes and did not like what she saw, because Vosk was doing the thing she did, pricing the whole machine, reading every part of it. And this is stock from the Verge-class world, the soft one. The one the survey line says not to land on. The broker stopped in front of her. You know what I find interesting, Draxal? Your reactor. Sesh reports it recovering. Output climbing 3 days running. And yet you feed this core double rations and rest it like a prize animal as though the station still lives or dies on it. Vosk's eyes did not leave Ren. If the reactor is recovering, why does the core matter so much? And if the core matters so much, why is the reactor recovering? One of those two things is a lie. In my experience on a ship like this, it is usually both. The chamber went very quiet under the reactor's stutter. Wren, spent looking in the cradle, felt the whole plan tilt on the edge of a blade, because the broker had just, in 8 seconds of standing still, seen the exact fault line she had been planning to use Sesh's skim, the false recovery, and had said it out loud in front of Draxal. Draxal's crest flattened. Sesh's reports are Sesh's business. The reactor recovers. The core is insurance. Insurance you feed double and never goad. Vosk's tone did not change. Draxal, I did not fly a fast courier out to a drifting salvage wreck to buy insurance. I came because you sent word you had a asterisk method, a way to make a living core out of cheap stock. That is worth a shipyard, yes. That is worth a fleet contract if it works, if it can be repeated, if it is not one lucky freak of a durable animal that will die the moment you look away. The broker turned from Wren at last and faced the overseer. So here is what I will pay for, not the core. Cores I can buy anywhere. A corpse in a chair is a corpse in a chair. I will pay for the mender, the one who knows how it is made. Vosk's eyes slid to Aru, and there was nothing in them but arithmetic. Sell me the mender and the method and one live specimen to prove it, and you are rich, Draxal, and you never have to understand a single thing about how it works. Keep trying to sell it yourself, and you will fumble it because you do not understand it, and I will watch you fumble it, and then I will buy the pieces cheap. It was, Oru understood with a cold that went deeper than the reactor's warmth could reach, a very good offer, and Draxal was the kind of small operator who knew a large one had just outmaneuvered him and hated it and would take the deal anyway because the alternative was fumbling. The broker would leave with the mender, the method, and one live specimen. The mender was Oru. The specimen was Wren. And the 400 in the low hold, and the plan, and the slow, careful rigging of a line strong enough to take a station in one clean pull. All of it would fly off on a fast courier in 2 pieces and never be assembled. I need to think, Draxal said, which meant yes. Think quickly, Vosk said. My courier does not drift. I give you until it has refueled off your bay 2 days and then I leave, with a deal or without one. And Draxal, the broker paused at the chamber door. Have your reactor master present his recovery figures to me before I go. I would like to understand your ship's power situation fully before I buy a piece of it. A full accounting. Vosk's eyes touched Sesh's siphon line where it ran to the emergency store, and Aru could not tell whether the broker had seen it or merely smelled it, and it did not matter which, because either way the broker had just told the whole chamber that in 2 days there would be a full accounting, and a full accounting would expose the skim, and an exposed skim would collapse the fault line before Wren could use it. The broker left. Draxal followed, already arguing with himself, and the 2 prisoners were alone in the loud, warm chamber with a clock that had just gone from weeks to 2 days. Well, Wren said when the door sealed. She did not sag any more. The spent-looking core sat up in her cradle with the flat, clear focus of a rigger watching a load start to slip. That's a problem. That is several problems, Oru said. He realized, calmer than he should have been, and understood after a moment that it was because she was calm, and her calm had become the thing he braced against the way he had once braced against the work. In 2 days the broker leaves with the method, one specimen, and me. Draxal will take the deal. And before the broker leaves, there is a full accounting that exposes Sesh, which collapses the only fracture in the crew we had. Weeks of rigging, and the line has to take the load in 2 days or it takes it never. He looked at her. You told me you rig a lift wrong and you drop it on your own head. We are being asked to make the pull before the line is ready. Yeah. Wren closed her eyes and the glow moved under her skin, and Oru watched her run the whole thing again, faster now under pressure, and not 1 degree warmer than she had been at the 9th minute on the table. So we don't make the pull we planned. We make a different one. She opened her eyes. The broker just did us 2 favors and doesn't know it. 1, she's forcing the accounting, which means she's about to expose Sesh asterisk for asterisk us on a schedule in a room in front of Draxal. We were going to have to engineer that. She's handing it to us. A beat. 2, She told the whole chamber that a live specimen is worth a shipyard and a corpse in a chair is worth nothing. She said it to Draxal's face. Which means for the next 2 days, the single most valuable thing on this ship, the thing two Kalrek are about to bid against each other for, is me staying alive and working. That flat small smile, sharper now. I've never been worth so much. Let's spend it before the sale closes. Spend it how? Oru said. In 2 days. First I need to know something, and only you can tell me, and you have to tell me true the way you told me true on the table. She held his eyes. You've been feeding me up, resting me, watching the paths. 6 days am I stronger than I was, not the ceiling we show them, the real one, the one only you and I know exists. Her voice stayed level. If I stopped performing a limit and actually pulled everything I've got, all at once on my schedule, how much is that now? Enough to matter? Or am I still a rigger who can only flicker the lights? Oru looked at the instrument board, at the tree of her, at the numbers he had been quietly logging for 6 days and showing no one, and he told her true. You are not a rigger who flickers the lights anymore, he said. 3 days ago you could dip a whole circuit. Yesterday you slewed the cargo crane a hand's width and made it read as a power sag, and no one but me knew you had done it. If you stopped performing a ceiling and pulled everything you have banked, all at once, he stopped and made himself finish, because she had taught him to lie to himself last. I do not know the true ceiling. I have never let you reach it and you have never let them see it. But I know it is far above what they think, and I know it is climbing every day I feed you, and I know that the trunk you are bolted to runs to every door and lock and system on this station. You asked me once whether the release was yours. It is. And what you can release is no longer a flicker. He set the board down. It is a great deal more than they can survive learning about. For a moment Ren Calder was quiet, and the reactor stuttered below, and something settled in her face that Oru had not seen before, not the flat waiting calm, but underneath it, briefly, the weight of a person deciding to pick up a load she could not put down once she lifted it. Okay, she said. Then here's how it goes, and it goes in 2 days because that's the clock we've got. She looked at the door, then back at him. The accounting's tomorrow. Draxal, Sesh, the broker in the reactor control room, all three going over the power figures. That's the one time all three of them are in the same room and the crew's attention is on the numbers instead of the holds. Her voice was very even. That's when the line takes the load. Not before. Not after. When the 3 people who run this ship are standing over a board full of lies, arguing about who's cheating who. And what does the line do when it takes the load? Oru said quietly. Ren told him. That night, while the crew slept and Vosk's courier drank fuel off the cargo bay, Ren Calder taught 400 people how to survive a station coming apart, and she did it with the lights. She could not reach them any other way. But the low-hold circuits ran through her, and T.O. Vance was down there with his dock cadence, and she now understood, with the ear of every captive who had learned in 6 days that the flickering lights meant a human up top was talking. So she talked. Slow, over hours in the old Rimlane cadence, 3 short, a long and then the message, spelled letter by letter in the patient dip, and rise of a circuit only she could reach. When the lights go out, stay down. When they come back green, the locks are open. Move to the cargo bay. Do not fight the crew. Do not touch the crew. Let the ship do it. It took her half the night to send it and be sure it was understood, because T.O. Vance was careful, and made her repeat the parts that mattered, and sent back questions in the cadence. How many crew? How much time? What about the ones too weak to walk? And she answered everyone, because a rigger who gives a crew half a plan gets a crew killed. She told him to carry the weak. She told him the crew count. She told him there would be very little time, and it would not feel like enough, and they should move anyway. And once, near the end, T.O. Vance sent up a question that was not about the plan. Who are you? Ren looked at the leads at her spine and the collar at her forearms, and the reactor stuttering below her, and the whole ship hanging off the chair she was bolted into. And she thought about how to answer that in dock cadence, and in the end she sent back the only true thing, the thing her grandmother would have sent. A rigger same as you, go to sleep, big lift tomorrow. Oru watched her do it from the corner where he was not permitted to leave, and when she finally let the lights go still and sagged back in the cradle, spent for real this time, he brought her a double ration and a measure of water and did not say anything for a while. You did not sleep, he said finally. Neither did you. Ren ate the way a rigger eats before a long shift, fast and without tasting it, refueling. Tell me the accounting again, where they stand, where the board is, which way the door opens. You have made me describe that room 6 times. Make it 7. When the load's on the line you don't get to check your rigging. You check it now on the ground until you could tie it blind. She drank the water. 7, Oru. He told her a 7th time the reactor control room, 1 deck down and forward, the power board along the far wall where Sesh's figures would be displayed, the single door that sealed inward, the 3 of them who would stand there tomorrow. Draxal, who owned the ship, Sesh, who was cheating it, and Vosk, who had come to buy it out from under both of them. He told her which trunk lines ran under that room's deck, because she had asked, and he had learned them for her, a mender studying the veins of a ship, the way he had once studied the veins of the things on his table. Good, Ren said. That's the room where it happens, because that's the room where, for about 10 minutes tomorrow, all 3 of the people who could stop us are going to be standing over a board full of each other's lies, not thinking about the core, not thinking about the holds, not thinking about you. She set the empty ration cup down. The whole plan is, make sure they're all in that room, all looking at the board, all certain they understand the ship, and then show them they don't. She closed her eyes. Now I sleep. 2 hours. Wake me if Sesh's siphon moves. He's going to get nervous before the accounting. Nervous men do stupid things the night before they get caught. She was right, which Oru was learning to expect, and it nearly ended everything. Sesh moved at the 3rd hour. Oru felt it before the board showed it, the reactor master's siphon opening wider than it had ever opened. Not a cell's worth tonight, but a hard, steady pull off the core. And Ren came awake with a sharp inhalation as she felt her banked charge start to drain out of her toward the emergency store. He's draining me, she said low and fast, fully awake in an instant. Hard, not skimming, draining. He's trying to empty me. Oru was already at the board. He knows about the accounting. He knows Vosk will see the skim in the figures. He read the siphon rate and understood cold. So he is covering it the only way he can. If the core is empty tomorrow, the emergency store is full, and he tells Vosk the reactor filled it, that the core was never the real source, that his recovery figures are true. He empties you to make his lie into a fact. He looked at her. And an empty core in a chair is a corpse in a chair. The broker said it herself. If he drains you dry tonight, by morning you are worth nothing, and you cannot pull anything, because there is nothing banked to pull. Then stop him. Ren's voice stayed level even as Oru watched her store fall on the board, even as the glow under her skin guttered lower than he had let it fall in 6 days. You control the leads. Cut the siphon. If I cut the siphon, he knows the mender did it. He goes to Draxal, says the mender is sabotaging the reactor master, and tomorrow instead of an accounting there is a mender bleeding out on the deck. Oru's fingers hovered over the board. I cannot cut it openly, and I cannot let him empty you. It was the trap in miniature, the whole indenture in one node. Every move he could make got someone killed, and the coward's math said do nothing, and doing nothing lost the ship. So don't cut it openly. Ren's eyes were closed, her whole attention turned inward now on the line running out of her. Oru, listen. The siphon runs to the emergency store, right? Through the thin wall you told me about. The wall between the emergency store and the main trunk. Her breath had gone tight, she was losing charge fast. You told me the wall was thin. You told me where. Yes. Then I don't have to stop him pulling. I just have to change where the pull goes. A thread of the old flat focus even as she drained. He's pulling hard, fine, let him pull. But I bank what's left behind the thin wall instead of in the store he thinks he's filling. He drains me and it goes into the main trunk, into the systems, into *me adjacent storage he can't see instead of his private cells. His siphon runs all night, and in the morning his emergency store is as empty as it was, and he can't understand why. And I've got my charge banked one wall over where he never thought to look. She was gray now, sweating, but the voice did not break. It's a rerouted line, Oru. Riggers do it in the dark with the load already moving. Help me find the thin spot and I'll push it through. Oru found her the thin spot on the board, and then he did the only useful thing a hand at the end of a wire could do. He watched the paths, her paths, while she did a thing he did not fully understand, which was to take a hard, hostile drain meant to empty her and steer it, drop by drop, through a wall in the ship's guts, and into a place her enemy could not see. It cost her. He watched it cost her. The tree of her ran hot and thin, closer to the 9th minute failure than she had been since the table, and twice he nearly overrode her and cut the siphon and damned the consequences, and twice she felt him about to and said through her teeth, "Don't. Watch the paths. Bring me down if I burn. Otherwise let me work." He let her work. By the 5th hour Sesh's siphon slackened, baffled. The reactor master somewhere in the ship staring at an emergency store that would not fill no matter how hard he pulled. Unable to report the failure because reporting it meant admitting the siphon existed. By the 5th hour Ren Calder sat gray and spent and alive in her cradle, her charge banked one wall over, invisible, waiting, and Sesh's private store sat empty, his lie hollowed out from the inside, ready to collapse under the broker's accounting in a way that now pointed at Sesh and away from the core. "He emptied himself trying to empty me," Ren said when it was done in a thread of a voice. "Spent all night draining a line I'd rerouted. Tomorrow Vosk opens his store expecting it full of stolen charge and finds it dry, and Sesh has no explanation that isn't the truth." A cracked breath. The skimmer just walked himself into the accounting with empty hands and a lie he can't back up. And he did it to himself. "I barely touched it." Oru brought her water and held it to her because her hands were shaking too hard to hold it, and she let him, and drank, and he saw exactly how close it had been. How near the 9th minute she had gone to steer a drain through a wall in the dark, and he understood something about the cauldron world then that no survey line had captured. "The line that warned my schools off your world," he said quietly. "It said your fauna were disproportionately durable. Do not land." He set the cup down. "It did not say the durable thing was that you do not stop working while you burn. That you rerouted a drain that was killing you and came out the far side with your enemy's store empty and your own charge hidden, and the first thing you did was calculate the accounting." He looked at her, gray and spent and calm in the chair that held the whole ship. "They wrote a warning about your bodies. They should have written it about your judgment." "Bodies are just the part they could measure from orbit," Ren said, and let her eyes close, and slept for real this time, 2 hours before the accounting, while her charge sat banked and hidden behind a thin wall in the guts of a ship that did not yet know it had already lost. Oru watched the paths and the door and the clock, and did not sleep at all. The accounting began at the start of the day shift, and Oru knew the moment it did because Draxal came for him. "You," the overseer said from the chamber door. "The broker wants the mender present. She wants to hear the power situation from every mouth that touches it. Come." His crest was tight. A night's sleep had not settled the deal churning in him, the broker's offer, the choice between selling his miracle himself and selling it to a smarter operator who would take the biggest cut. Leave the core. It is bolted in. It is not going anywhere. Oru looked at Ren, who sat in the cradle looking spent and docile and half-drained, which she was, the visible half of her, the performance of a core that had been through a hard night. The hidden half sat banked behind a thin wall one deck down, invisible, full, waiting. "The core should not be left unattended at low charge," Oru said, because a mender who abandoned his instrument too easily was a mender who did not value it. "If it destabilizes." "It will keep," Draxal said. "Come, or I have you carried." Oru went. It was, he understood as he walked out of the chamber for the first time in 6 days, exactly what Ren had wanted, the mender in the accounting room, in the room where it would happen, close enough to the board and the three of them to be her eyes when the lights went out. She had spent a day making Draxal think of moving the core and rejecting it, so that when the broker asked for the mender, the overseer's reflex would be to bring the man and leave the chair. The reflex had worked. Oru walked one deck forward and down into the reactor control room and took his place against the wall, a tool summoned to be questioned, and felt the whole ship humming under the deck, and knew that a rigger one chamber back was feeling it too, waiting for her 3 people to be in one place. The reactor control room was small and close, the power board bright along the far wall, Sesh's figures glowing across it, a graph of a reactor recovering, a lie 6 days deep. Draxal took the center of the room. Vosk stood easy by the board, unhurried, already having read the whole thing. Sesh stood by his figures with the specific stillness of a Kalrek who had spent the night failing to empty a core, and had no idea why, whose private store sat dry behind him, whose lie had been hollowed out from the inside while he pulled at a rerouted line in the dark. "Your recovery figures," Vosk said without preamble. "Show me the reactor output feeding the emergency store. The store should be near full if these are true. Open it." Oru watched Sesh not move. "The store reads full on the board," Sesh said. "The board reads what you tell it to read." Vosk's voice was still smooth, still unhurried, and that was what made it terrible. "I did not come out to a drifting wreck to read a board. Open the store. Physically, let me see the charge you say the reactor made." There was a silence in the small, bright room, under the reactor's stutter, and into that silence Draxal's crest began, slowly, to flatten, because even a blunt overseer could feel a lie about to come apart, and he was starting to understand that his reactor master had been standing on one for 6 days. "Open it, Sesh," Draxal said very quietly. Sesh opened the emergency store. It was dry. The board said full. The store was empty. The reactor master had spent all night draining a core into a line that went nowhere he could see, and now 3 sets of eyes were on an empty tank that his own figures said should be brimming, and there was no explanation that was not the truth, which was that the recovery had always been a skim off the core, and the skim was gone, and Sesh was a thief standing over the evidence of his own theft. "You have been stealing charge off the core," Vosk said, into the silence, unhurried, delighted, "and logging it as recovery, so the reactor is not recovering at all. The station lives or dies on that one live specimen after all, exactly as I thought, and your reactor master has spent 6 days lying to you about it, Draxal, and last night he tried to cover the lie and could not even manage that." The broker's eyes moved across the 3 of them and settled with satisfaction on the overseer. "Your ship is a knife fight in the dark, and none of you know where the others are standing, which is precisely why you should sell it to me and walk away rich before it kills you." Draxal turned on Sesh. Sesh reached for the goad at his belt. The 2 guards loyal to the reactor master, standing at the door, shifted their weight. And Vosk watched all of it with the pleasure of a broker who had come to buy a fractured crew and had just watched the fracture open on schedule, and reached, easily, toward the sidearm under the sleek armor, because a smart operator is armed at an accounting. That was the moment, the 3 of them in one small room, the crew fracturing along the fault line Sesh had built and Ren had hollowed, every eye on the empty tank and the drawn goad and the reaching hand, not one of them thinking about the chair one chamber back. That was when Ren Calder pulled the line. Oru felt it before he saw it, felt it the way she had taught him to feel the ship. A great banked weight one deck down coming off the winch all at once, controlled, deliberate, going exactly where she chose. And then the lights in the reactor control room went out. Not flickered. Went out, hard, and every board with them, Sesh's lying graph gone dark, the reactor stutter under the deck dropping into a deep silence as the core one chamber back stopped feeding the station its careful trickle and took hold of all of it, every circuit, every trunk, every door and lock and system that ran through the chair she was bolted into, and made them answer to her instead. In the dark, Oru moved to the wall by the door, the only one in the room who had known the dark was coming, and pressed himself flat and waited. The three Kalrek did not understand what had happened, and the not understanding was the point. Draxal's voice, sharp with the first real fear Oru had ever heard in it. "Sesh, the reactor. What did you do?" Sesh, backing toward the door. "It's not me, the core dropped." Vosk, unhurried even now, the smart operator. "The specimen. Someone get to the specimen," and the broker's sidearm coming up in the dark toward the door, toward the mender against the wall, because Vosk understood faster than the others that the core had done this, and the mender tended the core. Then the door sealed. It sealed inward on its own, the heavy pressure door of the reactor control room dropping into its frame and locking, because the door ran on a trunk line that ran through the chair, and the rigger in the chair had decided the three people who ran the ship were going to stay in one small room. The lock engaged with a sound Oru felt in his teeth. Vosk's sidearm found the door and did nothing to it. The broker was smart enough not to waste a second shot. Draxal threw his weight against it, and it did not move, because it was not a door anymore, it was a decision, and the decision had been made one chamber back by a small, durable thing that did not raise her voice. "Mender," Vosk's voice in the dark, close, the sidearm surely trained on the sound of Oru's breathing. "The core did this. You tend the core, open this door or I open you, I will not ask twice." Oru did not answer because there was nothing to say and because Ren had told him in the loud, warm chamber exactly what he was to do when the dark came. Nothing. Stand against the wall. Say nothing. Let the ship do it. He was the hand at the end of the wire, and for 6 days he had been learning that the hand did not always have to act, that sometimes the most useful thing a hand could do was stay still and trust the rigger. Down through the decks, the captives felt the lights go green. Ren had told them, when the lights go out, stay down. When they come back green, the locks are open. In the low holds the failing white lights died with the rest of the station, and the 400 stayed down in the dark as she had told them, and T.O. Vance counted in the dock cadence the way she had taught him, and then the lights came back not white, green, the color she had promised, the color that meant the hold locks had opened on the trunk that ran through the chair, and every lock on every hold on the low decks disengaged at once, because they all ran through her, and she had decided. And 400 Verge-class captives who had been told not to fight moved, instead toward the cargo bay through corridors lit green, by the woman bolted to the reactor. They did not fight the crew, they did not have to. The crew was scattered across a station that had stopped belonging to it, the cargo watch, the hold guards, the two loyal to Sesh now sealed in the dark control room with their master, and every one of them found that the doors did not open for them, that the lights did not come up for them, that their goads and their cutters and the ship guns racked in the cargo bay drew power off trunks that no longer answered, because a rigger had the winch and had decided who got charge and who did not. In the cargo bay, the crew watching Vosk's fueling courier reached for the ship guns and found them dead, reached for the bay doors and found them sealed, and then found the bay doors opening, but not for them, opening on the corridor, on 400 people moving in from the green-lit decks, unarmed, half-starved, and utterly beyond the reach of guns that would not fire and armor that would not power, and a crew that had spent 6 days certain the soft things did not fight. They still did not fight. They did not have to. They simply arrived in numbers into a bay where the weapons had gone cold, and took it, and the crew, cut off from every system that had made them the masters of the station, found themselves suddenly and precisely what the captives had been an hour before, bodies in a ship they did not control. And in the reactor control room in the dark, sealed in with the 2 men who ran the ship and the broker who had come to buy it, Oru stood against the wall and listened to the pressure change. It changed slowly. That was the thing he would remember. Ren had told him what the line would do when it took the load, and this was the part she had thought about longest, in the loud, warm chamber with the flat calm that had frightened him from the 9th minute. Because there were 40 of the crew, and she could have done a great deal more than seal a door, bolted as she was to a ship whose every system answered to her, and she had chosen not to. She was not going to cook the crew in the dark. She was not going to vent them. She had told him so plainly, the way she told him everything. "I'm not going to kill 40 people because I finally can," she had said. "That's not being strong. That's just being the one holding the goad. I've seen how that ends. I'm going to take the ship and I'm going to open the holds and I'm going to give the crew the same deal they gave us: you live if you stop." A pause. "The 3 in that room won't stop. Draxal owns people. Sesh sells them. Vosk came to buy the method. Those 3 don't get a deal because they've all had 100 chances to be something other than what they are, and they picked. But I'm not going to make it ugly. I'm just going to take the room away from them." So in the dark, the pressure changed slowly, the reactor control room's air cycling down as its life support drew off a trunk that no longer fed it, the small close room going gradually thin, not violent, not fast, a room quietly ceasing to be a place a Kalrek could stay. Vosk understood first, being smart, and stopped threatening the mender and started working on the door with the focused calm of an operator trying to survive, and could not open it because it was not a door. Draxal understood next and threw his whole weight against the seal and screamed at the mender and the core and the ship. And the ship did not answer him, because the ship answered to someone else now. And Sesh, the skimmer, who had spent the night trying to empty a core and had emptied only himself, slid down the sealed door in the dark, and understood last of all that the charge he had spent 6 days stealing had been quietly building the thing that was now, without heat, without hurry, without raising its voice, taking the air out of the room. "Mender," Vosk said one last time, and there was no threat left in it, only the arithmetic, the broker pricing his own situation and finding it poor. "Whatever it is paying you, I will triple it. I will make you a wealthy." "I am not the hand you need to bargain with," Oru said in the dark, and it was the only thing he said in that room. "I only tend the core. The core makes its own decisions." He drew a slow breath through his throat slits, in air that was going thin around him too, because the room did not distinguish, and he had known it would not, and had walked into it anyway on the word of a rigger who had promised she would bring him down before he burned. You should have read the survey line more carefully. It did not say the soft ones do not fight. It said do not land. The room went thin, and the Kalrek went down before the mender did, because Ren Calder had done the arithmetic on that too. Oru understood it as it happened. He had wondered in the loud, warm chamber why she had been so certain he would survive a room she was emptying of air, and she had told him then, flat and plain, the way she told him everything, because she had watched him breathe for 6 days, because a Kalrek was 3 times his mass and burned air the way its body burned everything, hot and fast and greedy, and a mender of his caste breath slow through throat slits and could go a long time on little, longer than any of them thought to measure. She had priced the biology in the room. She always priced the biology. She had built a trap that came for the big loud things first and gave the small quiet one time. So Draxal went down first, the largest of them, mid-scream against the door, his greedy body starved of the air it demanded. Sesh followed, sliding down the seal he could not open. Vosk lasted longest of the 3, being lean and disciplined and unhurried even in this, working the door with steady hands until the steadiness left them. And the broker's last act was not a threat but a small, precise, defeated sound. The sound of an operator who had come to buy a fractured crew and had been outpriced by a specimen in a chair, going down in the dark he had walked into on his own 2 feet. And then the room held 3 unconscious Kalrek and 1 mender still standing, breathing shallow and slow against the wall, his vision narrowing at the edges but his mind clear, and the door unsealed. It unsealed for him. Just for him, at the moment the last of the 3 went down, because the rigger 1 chamber back had been tracking every body in the room through the trunk that fed it and had known, to the breath, when the big loud ones were down, and the small, quiet one could be let out. The pressure door lifted out of its frame, and the corridor's green light and breathable air poured in, and Oru went through it on legs that barely held, out into a station that had changed hands, and behind him the door dropped and sealed again on 3 men who had run a ship and did not run it anymore. "You cut it close," Oru said, to the empty green corridor, knowing she could not hear him and saying it anyway. But she could hear him, after a fashion, because the corridor lights dipped once and rose, 3 short and a long, the dock cadence, "I'm here," and Oru laughed. A sound he had not made in the length of the indenture. A cracked, helpless sound, standing in a green corridor on a captured station, alive when he should have been dead in a thinning room, because a durable thing from a cauldron world had promised to bring him down before he burned, and had kept the promise to the breath. He went to her. He went down the changed corridors, past holds standing open and empty, past a cargo bay where 400 Verge-class captives had taken a crew that could not fire its guns, and everywhere the lights were green, and everywhere the ship answered to the chair. In the bay, the crew was disarmed and sitting against the bulkheads under the flat, unhurried watch of people they had starved for weeks, and not one captive had laid a hand on them beyond taking their weapons, because a rigger had said, "Do not touch the crew. Let the ship do it," and they had trusted her, and the ship had done it. A tall, gaunt human with a rigger's forearms stood at the center of the bay, directing the captives with short, economical gestures, and Oru knew before he was told that this was Tio Vance, the voice from the low hold, the hand at the other end of the cadence. "You're the mender," Tio Vance said when Oru reached him. It was not an accusation, though it could have been. The mender had killed 11 of the captives' own before Ren. It was an assessment, the same flat pricing Ren gave everything, and Oru understood it ran in them, this reading of the room, this holding of judgment behind the work. "She said you'd come. She said you count, a beat. Said you kept her breathing, that true." "She kept me breathing this hour," Oru said. "We are, I think, even. It is a strange thing to be even with a person who was strapped to your table a week ago." "Yeah, well," Tio Vance looked around the bay at 400 people free in a captured ship, and something moved in his gaunt face and was mastered. "Strange week. Go on, she's asking for you. The circuit keeps spelling your name." He turned back to the work of holding a bay. "Tell her the bay's ours. Tell her 40 crew, all accounted for, nobody dead but the 3 she sealed off, and even those 3, he stopped. "She's got some plan for those 3, hasn't she? She's always got a plan." "She has a plan for everything," Oru said, and went to the core chamber. Ren was where he had left her, bolted to the reactor, and she looked worse than she had ever looked, grayer than the night of the drain, because holding the whole station at once, every door, every lock, every circuit, the sealed room's slow suffocation, 400 locks thrown open, a bay's weapons drawn cold, all of it at the same time, had cost her in a way even the sealing performance had not. But her eyes came open when he entered, and they were clear, and the flat calm was intact. "You're standing," she said. "Good. I ran the air out slow enough that you'd make the door and fast enough that the big ones went first. It was tight. Calric burn air like they burn everything." A cracked breath. "You okay?" "I am alive because you priced my lungs against theirs a week before you needed to," Oru said. He was already at her collar, reading her paths, and what he read there stopped him. "Ren, your load, it is not coming down." The instrument tree of her ran hot, wide, wider than the ceiling they had ever shown, and it was not banking, not resting, not easing off now that the coup was done. "You have the whole station on you, all of it. Why are you not letting it go back to the reactor?" "Because there's no reactor to let it go back to," Ren said, and closed her eyes, and Oru went cold. "That's the part I didn't tell you because you'd have argued, and there wasn't time to argue." Her voice stayed level, the way it always stayed level, and that was how he knew it was bad. "The reactor didn't just stutter last night, Oru. Sesh's hard drain, the night before an accounting, he wasn't just covering the skim. He pushed the containment past what it had left. The cells that were nearly gone went gone. When I pulled the line this morning and took the load, I checked the reactor first thing, and there's nothing down there but a dead core and a stutter that's running on the last of the wall charge. She opened her eyes. The reactor's finished. It's not coming back. The only thing keeping 400 people breathing on this station right now is me. Oru stood very still in the loud, warm chamber that was not loud anymore, because the reactor's stutter under the deck had gone silent, and he understood that the silence was the sound of a dead machine, and the only pulse left on Saro's gantry was the one under the skin of the small, durable thing in the chair. "Then we get you off the load," he said, and heard his own voice climb, the flat Mender's register gone. "We ration. We power down everything but life support in one section, move everyone into it, cut the rest, bring your load down to something you can carry for more than an hour." "We're going to do all of that," Ren said. "The rationing, the powering down one section, everyone in it, that's exactly right, that's good rigging, do it, tell Tio. It'll bring the load off me a lot." Her eyes held his. "But it won't bring it to zero. Somebody has to hold the section that keeps everyone breathing until we reach help, and there's only one thing on this ship that can hold a load like that without corroding, and you're looking at her." A pause. "You built me to do this, Oru. You just thought you were building a battery for a crew. Turns out you were building the thing that was going to keep 400 of us alive after the crew was gone." That flat, small smile, gray and spent and utterly steady. Bad math on their part, good math on ours. "Now go find me a rigger who knows where the nearest port is, and let's find out how long I can hold." They powered the station down to a halt. Tio Vance ran it, because he was a rigger and this was rigging, the cold arithmetic of what a dying ship could keep and what it had to let die. One section, mid-hull, the old crew quarters and the wide cargo bay beside them, sealed off and warmed and lit and breathing while the rest of the gantry went dark and cold around it. 400 and some captives moved into the heart and the doors closed behind them, and everything outside the heart, the empty holds, the surgery where 11 had died, the corridors, the dark reactor was cut loose from the load, given nothing, allowed to freeze. It brought Ren's load down. Oru watched it come down on the instrument tree, section by section as Tio cut them, and each cut was a weight lifted off the small durable thing in the chair, and each cut was not enough. When the station was down to its heart, Ren Calder was holding the life support of one warm section for 400 people, and it was less than she had been holding at the coup, and it was still more than any body was built to carry, and there was no reactor left to hand it back to. "That's the floor," Tio Vance said, in the core chamber, reading the same board Oru read. He had come to see the thing keeping his people alive, and he stood looking at Ren bolted to the dead reactor with the flat, gaunt assessment of a man pricing a load he did not like. "That's everything I can cut without cutting air somebody's breathing. Below that, people start to die of the cold or the dark or the thin, and then what's the point?" He looked at Ren. "How long can you hold the floor?" "Don't know," Ren said. Her eyes were closed. She was spending nothing she did not have to spend, not even the effort of looking at him. "Longer than an hour. That's all I'll promise because that's all I know. Ask me again in an hour and I'll promise you another one." A cracked breath. "How far's the nearest port?" 6 days at what this Hulk can do on maneuvering thrust, Tio Vance said, and let it sit, because 6 days was the number and they both knew what it asked. "I've got hands who can run the thrusters and the nav. We can point this wreck at the Kellenway station and crawl. 6 days, maybe 5 if the thrusters hold." He crouched down to her level, which Oru had not seen anyone do, and spoke lower. 6 days on you, Ren, holding the floor, that's the lift. Can you take it?" For a moment the small durable thing in the chair was quiet, and Oru, who had learned to read her, saw her run the number 6 days of holding 400 lives on a body built to hold a battery's charge, the true ceiling still unknown, the cost uncounted, and saw her not flinch because she never flinched, and understood that the not flinching was not bravado. It was arithmetic. She had already decided that the only number that mattered was whether 400 people breathed at the end of 6 days, and every other number, including the one that was her own body, was just a line in the rigging. Pointed at Kellen, Wren said. Crawl, I'll hold the floor. She opened her eyes and looked at T.O. Vance, rigger to rigger. But you run a rest rotation on your hands and you feed everyone thin and even, and you don't let anybody spend charge on anything but air and heat, not lights, not the cranes, nothing, because every watt somebody wastes is a watt I have to hold that I didn't have to. This is a long lift. Long lifts kill you in the small waist, not the big load. She closed her eyes again. Now go crawl us to Kellen. Oru stays. Somebody has to watch the paths. T.O. Vance stood and looked at the mender, and something passed between the gaunt human and the small gray alien that neither named, an agreement about who was keeping whom alive, and then he went appoint a dead station at a way station 6 days away. The courier tried to take her on the second day. Oru felt it before the alarm, a hard clang through the cold outer hull, transmitted up the dead structure into the warm heart, the sound of Vosk's courier undocking and redocking hard, forcing a seal. He understood it at once, and so did Wren, whose eyes came open sharp. The broker's crew, she said. They finally figured out Vosk isn't coming back. She was tracking it through the ship, though the courier ran on its own power and she could not touch it, could only feel the boarders come through the seal into the cold outer corridors of the gantry. They're not fleeing, they're boarding, which means they want something worth boarding a dead wreck for, a beat. The specimen, or the mender, both are worth a shipyard, Vosk said so, right in front of them. They're coming to grab whatever's valuable and run before whoever killed the crew kills them too. Then seal them out, Oru said. You have the doors. I have the doors on the heart. I don't have the courier, and I can't spend the heart's air fighting boarders in the cold sections without starving the people I'm keeping alive. Her voice stayed level even as her paths ran hot. She was doing two things at once now, holding the floor and tracking the intruders, and Oru could see on the tree what it cost her. This is the trap in reverse. I'm the winch, but the winch is already carrying its rated load and then some. I spend charge sealing doors and funneling them. I take it off the air 400 people are breathing. I can't fight them and hold the floor. Not both. Not for long. Then you do not fight them, Oru said, and heard in his own mouth her arithmetic. You hold the floor. That is the one thing only you can do. The fighting, let the ones who can fight fight. Wren's eyes found his, and for a moment there was something in the flat calm that might have been approval, or relief, or the particular quiet of a rigger hearing another hand call the load correctly. Get Tio, she said. Tell him boarders in the cold sections coming for the core chamber and the mender courier crew armed, maybe 6 of them, EVA gear. Tell him I'll give him every internal door between them and the heart. I'll funnel them, seal them, slow them, spend what I can spare on it, but the stopping is his. His hands, his fight. I hold the air, he holds the ground. A cracked breath. And Oru, tell him not to make it ugly if he doesn't have to. Same deal as the crew. But if the courier crew won't stop, his people stop them, because I've got 400 lives on my back and I can't drop them to save 6 boarders who came here to sell us. So it was T.O. Vance and 40 of his hands who met the courier crew in the cold, dark sections of the gantry, and it was Wren Calder who fought beside them without moving, funneling the boarders down the corridors she chose, sealing the doors behind them, opening the ones ahead that led where she wanted them to go. Spending charge, she did not have to turn a dead station into a maze that answered to one side and not the other. The boarders had guns and EVA armor and the confidence of a crew that had boarded soft targets before. They did not have the ship. The ship belonged to the small, durable thing holding the floor, and she gave the ground to her own, door by sealed door, until the courier crew was funneled into a cold cargo section with no way forward and no way back, and 40 half-starved riggers who had spent weeks being the ones behind the locks were suddenly and precisely the ones holding the door. It was not clean. Oru heard through the hull that it was not clean, The courier crew did not all stop, and some of Tio's hands paid for the taking of the ship, and there were captives who had survived the low holds who did not survive the second day. But it ended, and it ended with the courier crew stopped, and the seal to their ship cut, and the courier itself, abandoned by its boarding party, its crew dead or taken, drifting free of the gantry on the flat cold arithmetic of a rigger who had decided a fleeing courier was worth more to her than a captured one. "Let it go," Wren had said, when Tio asked whether to try to hold the courier. "It'll run. It'll run to the nearest port screaming about a salvage wreck full of loose specimens that killed a Kalrek crew. Let it. A courier running scared into a port is a distress call I don't have to send." She was grayer than Oru had ever seen her, holding the floor through a boarding action, spending herself in ways the ceiling had never asked. Somebody hears that story, somebody comes to look. Maybe it's someone who wants to sell us. Maybe it's someone who wants to help. Either way, it's a ship pointed at us, and any ship pointed at us is 6 days closer than nobody. A cracked breath. Let the frightened man carry the message. Frightened men are very good at being loud. Not everyone in the heart made it to Kellan, and the ones who did not were the ones Wren asked about first, every waking hour before she asked about the load. Tia brought her the count each shift, the ones the low holds had worn too thin to recover, the two of his hands lost holding the boarding action, the old Vanu who had prayed through the surgery weeks ago and simply, one cold night in the heart, stopped. She took each name the way she took a load report, flat, complete, filing it where it would not be lost. And once, only once, Oru saw her jaw tighten over a name and then let go. Because grief was a weight and she was already carrying 400 and could not set the 400 down to lift the grief, and knew it, and chose the living, and paid for the choosing in a currency Oru could not read on any instrument he owned. Later, she said, when Oru asked if she wanted to stop and rest and let herself feel it. The dead keep, the breathing don't. You mourn when the lift's set down, not during. My grandmother buried 2 brothers on a hauler and rigged straight through both and cried when the cargo was safe and not 1 minute before, and people called her cold and she wasn't cold, she was carrying. A cracked breath. I'll mourn them at Kellan, all of them. I've got the names. I don't lose the names, I just don't get to hold them yet. The courier ran. And Wren Calder held the floor, grayer and thinner by the hour, while a dead station crawled toward Kellan with 400 lives on the back of one, and Oru sat beside her through the long dark days and watched the paths, and brought her thin even rations she could barely eat, and learned the last thing the cauldron world had to teach him, which was that the durability the survey line had warned his schools about was not in the tissue at all. It was in the refusal. The tissue was only where the refusal lived. The crawl to Kellan took 5 days, and on the 4th, the thing Oru had been dreading found them. It began as a fault in the maneuvering thrust, one of the scavenged units Tio's hands were nursing to push the dead station forward. It seized, and to keep it from tearing loose it had to be brought back online under load, and bringing it online under load pulled hard on the heart's power for the length of the restart. A spike, sudden and steep, off the only source the station had left, which was the small durable thing in the chair. Oru saw it climb on the instrument tree and knew, with the cold that had lived in him since the reactor died, that it was climbing toward the true ceiling, the number he had never let her reach, the number no one knew, the line past which 11 bodies had become corpses. Wren, he was at the collar. The thruster restart, it is spiking. Your load is going past the floor, past the ceiling we ever showed them up toward. I feel it, her voice was a thread. 5 days of holding had worn her down to almost nothing that Oru could see, gray and hollowed and barely able to lift her hand. But the flat calm was still there, banked under the exhaustion, the way the charge was banked under her skin. How long's the restart? 90 seconds, perhaps less. Then the thruster catches and the load falls back to the floor. He read the tree, read her paths running hot and wide, wider than he had ever seen them, into territory his instruments had no marks for. But the spike, Ren, for those 90 seconds you carry the whole heart plus the restart, and it is more than the ceiling, it is more than I have ever let a body. Then don't let a body let me. She closed her eyes. You keep saying ceiling like it's a wall. It's not a wall, Oru. It's the place the others let go. They let go because they didn't know they were allowed to hold on past it. I know I'm allowed. A cracked breath, the words coming slower. 90 seconds. 400 people stop breathing if the thruster tears loose and we lose the heart. So I hold the 90 seconds. That's the whole problem. One problem at a time. Watch the paths. Bring me down after. Not during. During, you leave me on it whatever it costs, because the cost of coming off it is 400 dead. Her hand found the arm of the cradle and closed on it. Tell Tio to restart the thruster. Now. While I've still got the 5th day in me. Oru told Tio to restart the thruster. And then he did the hardest thing the indenture had ever asked of him, which was to leave a body on a load past the line where every instinct and every instrument screamed to bring it down, to sit with his 6 fingers on the collar and not cut it, to watch the tree of her run into the dark past every mark he had, and trust the rigger's judgment over the menders, because she had earned that trust 11 bodies and 5 days ago. The spike climbed. The seam of light he had first seen kill a threed at the 9th minute spread up her arms and across her, brighter than he had ever let it burn, a body carrying more fire than a body could carry, and carrying it, not burning under it, because some part of her had decided to hold on past the place the others let go, and the deciding was the whole difference. The deciding had always been the whole difference. For 90 seconds the small, durable thing in the chair was more light than flesh, and Oru sat with his hand on the collar and did not cut it, and watched the paths and waited. The thruster caught, the load fell. It fell off her all at once as the restart completed, back down to the floor, and Ren Calder sagged in the cradle, a shade of gray Oru had no name for, and for one terrible moment the tree of her guttered so low he thought she had spent the last of herself holding the 90 seconds, and then it steadied, low and even, a coal that had been asked to become a furnace and had come back to being a coal, and had not gone out. Ren, Oru brought her down further, gently, taking every watt off her that the heart could spare. Ren, speak. Held it, she said from very far away, eyes still closed. Told you, not a wall. A long pause and Oru's throat slits closed in dread, and then, something changed though, felt it change. In the 90 seconds, her eyes came open, and Oru saw that the seam of light under her skin had not fully banked this time, that a low even glow remained in her forearms in the paths that had not been there before the spike and did not fade. It's not going back all the way, the light, feel like it's staying, like the paths learned the shape of it and decided to keep it. She almost smiled, gray and spent and changed. Think you built me better than you meant to, Oru. Think the 90 seconds finished the job. Oru read the paths and she was right, and he understood what the 4th day had done. The body that had learned to carry the charge had, under the true load, stopped merely carrying it and become it. The store no longer something fed in through leads and held, but something the tissue now made and kept on its own, banked in the paths, part of her the way the durability had always been part of her. She was not a container he charged anymore. She was a source. The leads at her spine, he saw, had become almost ceremonial. She was holding the floor now off a charge her own changed body sustained, and would sustain, whether or not she was bolted to anything at all. You are not the core anymore, he said slowly. You were the core. Now you are the thing the core was pretending to be. He sat back, and something in his chest that had been clenched since the reactor died let go, because for the first time he understood that whatever happened at Kelun, she did not need the chair. Ren, you could stand up. The station's floor is running off you, but not off the cradle, off you. You are no longer bolted to anything. You are only choosing to sit here and hold it. Course I'm choosing. Her eyes had drifted closed again, exhaustion pulling her under, but the flat calm followed her down. 400 people breathing off me. You think I'm going to get up and go for a walk? A thread of dry cadence, her grandmother's voice in it. You hold the load till the lift's set down. Then you get up. Not before. Rigger's rule. She was going under. One more day, Oru. Kellan's one more day. Hold the floor one more day and then everybody's down and I can put it down too. The glow banked low and even permanent now part of her. Watch the paths. Wake me if the thruster faults again. Otherwise let me. And she was asleep, holding 400 lives off a body that had, on the fourth day, quietly stopped being able to stop. Oru sat with her through the fifth day, and told her the thing he had never told anyone, because she was asleep and could not use it against him, and because after 5 days he found he wanted the small, durable thing to know who had been at the end of her wire. He told her about the Mender schools and the indenture, how a Mender caste that healed was worth more as property than as physicians, how the Kalrek had bought his debt in his hands and set him to keeping stock alive just long enough to be useful, and then killing it when it was not. He told her about the 11, and how he had learned to do the coward's math to survive it, and how each of the 11 had a name he had made himself not learn, because a subject with a name was a subject you grieved, and grief was a thing the indenture did not leave room for. He told her that she was the first he had let himself name in a decade, and that naming her had broken something in the coward's math that he did not think would grow back, and that he was glad, though it would probably get him killed, because the last 5 days sitting beside a rigger who held 400 lives without raising her voice had been the first 5 days in the length of the indenture that he had been something other than a hand at the end of a wire. "You said I count," he told the sleeping woman in the loud, quiet chamber on the 5th day, with the light banked permanent under her skin. "No one has said that to me since before the debt. I do not know if it is true. But I have decided to act as though it is, because you act as though everything is a load you can choose how to carry, and it turns out that is a better way to live than the coward's math." He watched the paths, steady and even. "So, I count. You count. 400 people down in the heart count. And in one more day we set the lift down at Kellan, and then we find out what the galaxy does when it meets a thing it wrote a warning about and never once understood." On the 6th day, a ship found them. It came in fast on the gantry's dead hull from the Kellan approach, matched the crawl, and hailed. And Oru, at the board, reading the hail come in on a band the station could barely receive on the scraps of power Ren could spare, saw the signature and did not know it and woke her. "A ship," he said, "fast on us, hailing I do not know the make." He helped her lift her head. "Ren, it could be the port coming to sell us, it could be another Vosk, I do not know what it is." Ren Calder opened her eyes and reached out through the wire one more time weakly to feel the ship that had matched their crawl, and something crossed her gray spent face that Oru had not seen in 6 days, not since before the low hold. A thing he had no word for until he understood it was recognition. "It's not a Vosk," she said. Her voice was almost gone, but there was something under it now, banked like the light. "That's a human hull, Oru. That's Rim Lane running lights. That's," a cracked breath and the ghost of the flat small smile. The courier ran to Kellan screaming, and there were humans at Kellan, and humans here one of theirs is loose on a wreck full of a dead slaver crew. She let her head fall back, and the smile stayed. "They came looking. Course they came looking. You don't leave a rigger on a dead ship. Everybody in the Rim Lanes knows that. You come get your own." The humans came aboard through the cargo bay, and Oru, who had spent a decade watching the Kalrek board things, understood within a minute that he had never seen a boarding done like this. There were 9 of them, in hard-worn pressure rigs the color of nothing in particular, carrying themselves with the unhurried economy of people who had done this before and did not need to prove it. They came through the seal, and the first thing they did was not level weapons at the crowd of captives. The first thing they did was set down water, crates of it, and ration packs and thermal blankets, passed hand to hand into the crowd before a single question was asked, while 2 of them moved through the 400 with the flat, quick assessment of medics pricing who was closest to dying. Only after the water was down did the one in front push back her faceplate and look for whoever was in charge. She was older than Ren, weathered, with the same rigger's forearms as T.O. Vance and a scar through one eyebrow that no one had bothered to fix. And she found T.O. in the crowd and read him as crew and said, in the Rim Lane trade tongue, "Who's holding this wreck up?" "Somebody's holding it up. There's no reactor signature and you're all still breathing." "Who?" "Our rigger," T.O. Vance said. "Core chamber over the dead reactor. She's been holding the heart 6 days." A beat, and Oru heard the thing under it, the thing the whole crowd had come to feel about the small, durable creature in the chair. "Careful with her. She's about done. And the alien with her, the gray one, he's not crew. He's the one kept her alive. He's with us." The weathered human took 9 seconds to redistribute her whole understanding of the situation, and Oru watched her do it. And it was the same recalibration he had watched Ren do on his table in the first minute, the same flat repricing of the room, and he understood then that it was not one durable freak the survey line should have warned the schools about. It was the whole species. They all did this. They read the machine, priced the parts, held the judgment behind the work, and did not waste emotion once the arithmetic came out. "Show me the rigger," she said. They came to the core chamber, the weathered human and 2 of hers, and they stopped in the doorway the way everyone stopped in that doorway, and looked at the small gray spent thing in the cradle with the light banked permanent under her skin, holding the life support of 400 people off a body that had, on the 4th day, stopped being able to stop. "I'm Saro," the weathered human said. Oru noted distantly that the station he had been dying on had been named for a human, and filed it, and understood he would never learn the story, and that it did not matter. Cutter * long shift * out of Kellan. A Kalrek courier came into the way station 4 days ago screaming about a salvage wreck full of loose specimens that killed its crew. Kalrek wanted a bounty for the location. Somebody at Kellan heard specimens and Rim Lane hauler and did the math. She crouched to Ren's level, the way Tio had, rigger to rigger. "That was you they were calling specimens, wasn't it?" "That was all of us," Ren said. Her voice was nearly gone. 400 of us, and every other kind in the low holds. Get them off first. The weak ones can't take much more thin air." Even now, spent to almost nothing, she was rigging the lift, triaging, sequencing, spending her last words on the load and not on herself. "There's a mender, gray, cephalopod, name's Oru. He killed people before I came, on the crew's orders, and he'll tell you that himself because he's honest to a fault. And then he kept me alive 6 days and cut the air on the 3 who ran this ship and got me here. He's with me. Whatever happens, he's with me. Say it back so I know you heard it." "He's with you," Saro said. "Heard it," it said. She looked at the banked light under Ren's skin, at the dead reactor, at the leads that Oru had told her were only ceremonial now. "You've been holding 400 people up with your own body for 6 days. "Somebody had to hold the floor," Ren said. "Reactor died. I was the thing that could hold a load without corroding. That's just what was true." A cracked breath and the ghost of the flat small smile spent gray and unbothered even now. "You can take the floor off me any time you're ready, Saro. Your cutter's got power. Tie the heart into your lines and I'll let go. I've been waiting 6 days to let go. Just tell me when the lift's set down." Saro's people tied the * long shift into the heart, and it took an hour, and Oru spent the hour at the collar reading the paths of the thing that had stopped being a core and become a source. And when the human cutter's power came up through the trunk and took the life support off her, he told her, in the loud, quiet chamber, the words she had been holding out for. "The lift is set down, Ren," Oru said. "The cutter has the heart. 400 people are breathing off human power now. You can let go." And Ren called her let go. Oru watched it come off her on the instrument tree, 6 days of held load releasing all at once, the floor she had carried lifting away, and for a moment he was afraid, the old fear, that letting go would take the last of her with it, that a body held at the edge for 6 days would follow the load out into the dark. But the light under her skin did not gutter. It stayed. The paths that had learned the shape of the charge on the 4th day kept it, banked and even in hers, and she sagged in the cradle free of the station's weight for the first time in 6 days and breathed, just breathed, a small durable thing that had set the lift down and lived. "Okay," she said after a while, eyes closed, to no one, to the ship, to her grandmother, to the survey line that had warned the galaxy off her world and never once understood what the warning meant. "Okay, that's the lift. Everybody's down." A long breath. "Now I get up." She did not get up, not that day. She was carried on a stretcher off the dead station and onto the asterisk long shift by 2 humans who handled her the way you handle something that has done a hard thing and earned soft handling. But she had said it, and Oru understood that the saying was the getting up, that a rigger who announces the lift is set down has already, in the part of her that mattered, stood. They took the mender too. Oru had prepared himself in the hour the cutter tied in for what came to menders who had killed. He had killed 11. He had said so to Ren on the first day, and he would say so to the humans, because she had priced him as honest to a fault, and he found he did not want to make her wrong. He walked off the dead station between 2 human crew, expecting to be walked into a hold, and locked there with the surviving Kalrek, the crew, and the courier boarders, who were being taken off in restraints to answer at Kellan for 400 counts of a thing the trade tongue did not have a soft word for. But they did not take him to the hold. They took him to the asterisk long shift asterisk S small medical bay, and Sarah was there, and she looked at him with the flat rigger's assessment and said, "She says you kept her alive. She says you'll tell me the rest yourself. So tell me." And Oru told her the rest himself. The 11, the indenture, the coward's math, all of it. The way he had told the sleeping Ren on the 5th day, holding nothing back. Because a mender who had begun to count did not get to stop counting when the count went against him. He told her, and Sarah listened with the same held judgment her whole species carried, and when he was done she was quiet for a while. "You were a slave doing a slaver's work under a goad," Sarah said finally. "And the day you got a subject who could survive, you stopped killing and started conspiring, and you sat 6 days at the edge of a dead reactor keeping her alive when you could have run. That's the count. It's not clean. Nothing out here's clean." She stood. "Kellan's got a tribunal for the Kalrek. You'll testify. What you did before Ren, that's on the record and you'll carry it. What you did after, that's on the record too." She paused at the door. "The rigger says you're with her. Out here that means something. It means more than the tribunal, honestly. You keep proving her right and the count comes out fine. You start proving her wrong," the ghost of the same flat human almost smile, "well, you've seen what one of us does bolted to a chair. Don't find out what we do standing up." Kellan Way Station was a wheel of scavenged habitat rings turning slow over a gas giant's cold blue face, and it took the 400 in, and did not quite know what to do with them. That was the thing Oru learned in the first days at Kellan, watching from the edges the way he had always watched, that the galaxy had a shape for a slaver crew and a shape for rescued cargo, and no shape at all for what had actually come off the gantry, which was 400 half-starved captives who had been told by their own not to fight, who had walked through a coup without touching the crew, who had defended a boarding action and buried their own, and crawled a dead station 6 days to a way station on the back of a single girl. The way station's clerks tried to file them as refugees. T.O. Vance's people did not file as anything. They organized. Within a day they had a birth, a rotation, a list of their dead, and a spokesman, and within 2 days the clerks had stopped trying to file them and started asking them how they wanted things done, which was, Oru understood, the same recalibration Sarah had done in 9 seconds and the whole galaxy would eventually do in 9 years. The Kalrek faced the tribunal. Draxal and Sesh and Vosk did not. They had gone down in a thinning room and not come up, and the record noted it as what it was, which was the ship changing hands. The surviving crew and the courier boarders answered for the low holds, and Oru testified, and the 11 were entered into the record with the names he had made himself not learn, and had learned anyway in the end, from the manifests, because Ren had taught him that a subject with a name was a subject you did not get to file away, and grief was the price of counting, and he had decided to pay it. Ren recovered slow. Oru tended her because no one at Kellan knew how, and because she was, whatever else she now was, still his patient, still the tree of paths he had learned to read better than he had ever read anything. She slept the first 2 days almost entirely, a body paying 6 days' debt at once. On the third she ate a full ration without help. On the fourth she sat up and looked at her own forearms, at the low, even light banked permanent under the skin, the light that had learned its shape on the 4th day of the crawl and decided to stay, and she turned her arm over in the thin blue station light and priced it, flat, the way she priced everything. "It's not going away," she said. "It was not a question. The store, I can feel it, it's mine now. My body makes it, keeps it, banks it. I'm not carrying it anymore, I am it." She looked at Oru. "You built me to hold a charge for a crew, and I ended up building myself into something that holds it for good. There's no going back to just rigging cargo, is there? I light up in the dark now. I could power a hab off my own arm." "No," Oru said, "there is no going back, I am sorry. I did not know the 4th day would finish it. I did not know there was a 4th day to finish." He sat with the weight of it, the mender's oldest weight, the one the indenture had taught him to bury. "I have changed your body past changing back, on a table under a goad to save a station. Whatever you are now, I made you it, and you did not choose the making, only the surviving of it." Ren was quiet a moment, turning her lit arm in the blue light. "My grandmother took a charge off a mooring line that would have stopped a Kalrek heart," she said. "Swore at the line, kept working. She carried something in her after that too, a bad hand, a shake, a thing the charge left in her that never left." A pause. "She didn't spend the rest of her life mourning the hand. She rigged one-handed, and she was better at it than most people with two, because she'd stopped being able to rely on the easy way and had to learn the true way." She flexed her lit fingers, testing the banked charge the way she'd once tested a load. "You didn't take something from me, Oru. You left something in me. There's a difference. My grandmother knew the difference. I'm going to learn to rig with what got left in me, same as she did, and I'm going to be better at whatever comes next than I ever was at cargo." The flat small smile, warmer now, or as warm as it ever got. "One problem at a time. This is just the next lift." And that, Oru understood, was the last thing the cauldron world had to teach him, and the thing no survey line could ever have measured from orbit. That the durability was not in the tissue surviving the load, and not even in the refusal to let go, but in this, the flat, clear willingness to pick up whatever the universe left in you and price it as an asset and build the next thing out of it, without grief for the old shape, without rage at the hand that had reforged you, one problem at a time until the lift was set down. The galaxy took longer to learn it than Oru did. There was a hearing at Kellan, weeks later after the tribunal, when the Waystation's governing ring had to decide what the record would say about the thing that had come off the gantry. Because a Kalrek crew had bought 400 Verge class as cheap durable labor, and had been ended by them, and the precedent mattered to every operator in the rim lanes who had ever read a survey line and thought soft, does not fight. A clerk of the ring, a four-armed scholarly thing that dealt in classifications, pulled the survey record on Ren's world and read it into the hearing, the world code, the cauldron designation, the single dry line entered by whatever unlucky team had made the survey. Fauna disproportionately durable. Do not land. "The classification stands," the clerk said. The way clerks said things, as though a world could be filed and closed. The warning was accurate. The world is durable. Operators who ignore a survey line do so at their own cost. The Kalrek ignored it. The record will note that the classification performed as written. And Oru, who had been called to the hearing to testify and had testified, and who had spent a decade keeping his head down and his calculations hidden, stood up in the ring's chamber and did a thing he had never done in the length of the indenture, which was to correct a classification to its keeper's face. The classification did not perform as written, Oru said. The line says durable. The line says do not land. Both are true and both are useless because they describe the tissue and the tissue is the least of it. The chamber turned to him, the small gray mender who had killed 11 and saved 400, and he found he did not lower his voice into the flat submissive register, not anymore. I had 11 bodies on my table before hers. Durable bodies. Strong bodies. They all died because durability is not the thing. I have watched a Verge-class rigger take a hostile drain meant to empty her and steer it through a wall in the dark while it burned her, and come out the far side with her enemy's store hollow and her own charge hidden, and calculate the accounting before she calculated her own survival. I have watched one of them hold 400 lives on her own body for 6 days past the point every instrument I own says a body fails, because some part of her decided she was allowed to hold on past the place the others let go. That is not durability. Durability is a wall you break yourself on. He looked at the clerk, at the 4 scholarly hands, at the record open on the table. What your survey team felt from orbit and could not name, what they wrote down as asterisk do not land because they had no better word, it was not that the fauna were hard to kill. It was that the fauna do not stop. Under load, past the ceiling, into the dark. They do the arithmetic and they price the cost and they pick up the load anyway, and they do not put it down until the lift is set. Your line warns operators away from a strong animal. It should warn them away from a species that will crawl a dead station 6 days on one girl's spine rather than let 400 strangers stop breathing. He sat down. Amend the line or do not. But you have been warned by the wrong word for a long time, and the Kalrek paid the true price for reading the wrong word, and they will not be the last, unless you finally write down what the warning actually means. The clerk did not amend the line that day. Clerks do not. But Oru saw it enter the record, his testimony, word for word, filed beneath the old dry survey line, so that the next operator who pulled the classification on Wren's world would read asterisk fauna disproportionately durable. Do not land. And then beneath it, the account of what the durability had turned out to be, and would have, for the first time, a chance to understand the warning before ignoring it. It was, Oru thought, the most useful thing he had done with a classification in his life. It was also, he understood, the first free thing. Wren stood up for the first time on the day the long shift logged out of Kellan for the rim lanes, because Saro had offered a berth to the rigger and the mender both, and Wren Calder did not intend to be carried aboard a ship she meant to work. She stood slow in the thin blue station light, a small durable thing with a scar-healed pale on one cheekbone, and a low even glow banked permanent under the skin of her arms. And she took the weight of her own body for the first time in the length of everything that had happened, and she did not sway. Oru stood ready to catch her, and she did not need catching, and he understood that she had known she would not, that she had run the arithmetic on her own legs the way she ran it on everything, and had stood only when the number came out. There it is, she said, upright, testing the deck under her feet the way she'd once tested a hold circuit. Legs still work. Light still there, both true. Both mine. She looked at the mender who had built her and been rebuilt by her, the gray hand that had been at the end of her wire and was now simply at her side. You coming, Oru? Saro's got a berth for a mender who counts, and there's a whole rim laying out there full of operators who read the survey line and think asterisk soft does not fight. The flat small smile, the one he had learned to be glad of. Somebody's going to have to keep being there when they find out different. I hold the load. You watch the paths, it's a good rig, be ashamed to break it up. I am coming, Oru said. There was never a version where I did not come. I decided that on a table on the first day, when a subject I was going to kill in 9 minutes told me my arithmetic was a coward's and was right. He fell in beside her as she walked, slow and steady and glowing faintly in the cold blue light, toward the berth and the ship and the rim lanes and whatever came next. You should know the light under your skin. It will fade a little in the calm, but it will always come back up under load. You will spend the rest of your life lighting up exactly when things get hard and going quiet when they do not. He watched her walk, upright, unbolted, free. It is a strange thing to carry. No, it isn't, Ren said. It's just true. She reached the berth and stopped and looked back once at the turning wheel of Kelon, at the 400 settling into a galaxy that was still learning their shape, at the dead station somewhere behind them that had changed hands over a board full of lies. Then she looked forward at the ship. Everything on my world is trying to kill you, she said, quiet, flat, to the mender at her side, to no one, to her grandmother, to the survey team that had flown away and written "Do not land." You don't get to be soft, you hold things, it's what we do. She stepped aboard. Come on. There's always another lift. The berth sealed behind them, and the light under her skin banked low and even in the calm, waiting, the way a fire waits in a hearth built to hold fire, quiet now, and ready to come up the moment the next hard thing arrived, which on the rim lanes it always did.